Hello everyone, we're glad you're with us today. It's so nice of you all to come out to Palmdale, Masonic Lodge here, to hear our friend, Josef Dolezal. My name is Vivian Kamori. I'm the host of The Broad Perspective on the Broad Perspective Network. We interview many people. We've interviewed over several hundred. And every once in a while, someone's light shines so bright. Their wisdom is so intense. You say, I want to learn more. I want to know more of what this person has to say. And that person for me has been Josef Dolezal. Joseph's formal education was in the University of Florida, focusing on mathematics and physics. However, his greatest education has been self-taught. He isolated himself up at the Pyramid Center, which is in the mountains above San Bernardino. And there in Solace, he studied his whole life, but there especially he studied esoteric wisdom, Egyptian mythology, along with a host of other metaphysical topics. And today he's going to share with us information on raw magic. Welcome, Joe.
All right. First of all, I would like to thank everybody for coming out this Sunday and listening to this lecture. I think you guys will get something out of it. Because we are kind of strapped on time, then I'm just going to cover the basics of the concept of magic and its misconceptions. And essentially, like the title insinuates, it's raw magic. Now, if you guys notice the title of it, then it was raw magic, and there was basically two different spellings of raw magic. It was R-A, like the sun god, the Egyptian sun god, R-A Ra, from 2500 BC, which represented the sun in ancient Egyptian mythology, which coincidentally does have a lot to do with magic in the context that we're going to talk about it briefly today. The other idea is that it was raw in the essence of being essential, basically being that life force within us that we have, that we currently possess, but because of either indifference or ignorance of those potentials within us, we aren't aware that we actually have these greater potentials which we can deem magical or psychic in nature. And that's another concept that we're going to talk about. So as the title insinuates, raw magic, it actually has two meanings. One, basically representing Ra, the sun god, which is the physical sun, but also the allegorical sun. And also Ra, in essence, in terms of raw as in essential raw, the raw potential within us. So what is magic, first of all? There's a big misconception that started around the 1900s. And magic, most people think of magic today as some kind of illusionary, trickery, card playing, Houdini stuff, escape out of chains and whatnot. And that is, in some context, what magic is also, but the way I'm referring it to, and the way that the basically spiritualists throughout the centuries and throughout the millennia referred to it as, was basically being able to consciously manipulate the life force within us, which is actually responsible for our life, for our breath, our heart. And these are interesting concepts and interesting ideas, because when you think about it, we think that we are in control of so much of our life. And when you think about how much we take for granted the fact that we even can breathe when we sleep and we're not conscious of it, or that our heart beats and we have no idea why it beats or when it beats or how it beats, and the fact that we're even born and we die, or rather transmutate into another existence or reality basically against our own will, it goes to show that there are forces that are currently beyond our conscious understanding or conscious control. And this is really where an individual would really want to focus on the inner potentialities that exist within themselves, because to be able to control those forces is really what a true magician in the context of a 15th century alchemist, or in the biblical sense, really is about, is being able to understand, be aware, develop, and control those inner life forces that are within us. So what really galvanized me to look at this whole subject matter, it actually started when I was in my late teens. I began studying quantum mechanics, which was a big thing. It is now as well. And that actually led me to the University of Southern Florida, where I studied, I did formally study physics. I majored in mathematics and minored in physics. And after about 4 to 5 years in formal academia, I realized one day that it wasn't what I was looking for at all, because again, my objective was to understand these fundamental operations within the universe, which we are, of course, a part of. So to understand the universe is really to understand us, or vice versa. If we understand our microcosm, then we could understand the macrocosm outside, which is the universe. Well, then again, to not tangent too far, when I had spent about 4 to 5 years in the university level, I learned a few things that were relevant and important to the subject matter of magic in the context we're speaking about it. But I realized that there definitely was not the answer that I was looking for, in the respect that it will not explain essentially what I was looking for. And it's ironic because science has this whole stigma, this dogma about being the cure-all, the answer to basically undermining religion. And the farther you get into quantum mechanics, the farther they'll tell you, one, they don't really know much of anything, which is the Heisenberg principle. 2, they say, as you think and so you become. Ironic, the Bible is saying exactly that, 2,000 years ago, and now, the quantum mechanics is saying the same exact thing, that the observer actually affects the experiment, which is kind of showing that correlation between the individual and the outside. And but anyways, to make a long story short, I realized that there was an interesting something that I did take from those few years in formal academia. And that was that the concept of the electromagnetic light and gravitational force. And the reason is because, scientists are trying to create this grand unified theory, which is why quantum mechanics was even created back in the 1920s and the 30s. And to this day, at least publicly, nobody can really make that distinction or correlation between what are these correlations and what are basically the relationships between these apparent fundamental forces that are different. And it turns out that they're just different aspects or characteristics of the same exact force, actually. And to elaborate that, like I mentioned to some people that already know me, if we take electricity and pump it through a wire, you basically create, if you have a wire, let's say for example this is our wire, and you run electricity through it, you actually will get a perpendicular, a 90-degree magnetic energy emanating from that electricity that's moving forward. So there you already have electricity and magnetism, which of course science unifies as one field now. But what's interesting about that is that when you amplify that current, that electric current, to a certain magnitude, you actually will get photons emanating from that electromagnetic energy, which is interesting because now you have light. Interesting. So when we see, for example, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, but when we see the saints or sages or the yogis or whoever, the ancients of yore, that meditated very intensely and you see halos behind them, I'm of the volition that it wasn't fabricated. They weren't saying, oh, this guy or this woman is so enlightened that we think there's a halo behind him, but I do believe that there was actual light emanating from them as a byproduct of their intense concentration. And we demonstrated that scientifically, that that's exactly what happens, because we all have the electromagnetism within us. When we focus it, then light literally is a byproduct, or photon radiation is a byproduct of intensifying the electromagnetic dynamic. Now, why that's interesting, and this starts going more into the actual mystic doctrines of the past, is that when we find systems, for example, like the Kundalini yogic chakra system, which is a byproduct of the Upanishads. Now, a brief history on that, just so the people that have not heard it know where it's coming from. The Upanishads are basically scriptures within modern-day India that were supposed to be commentaries on the Rig Vedic literature, which the Rig Veda are hymns that emanate from India, and they are, anthropologists will say they're about anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 years old. I personally think they're much older than that, and they're probably remnant byproducts of Atlantis, what remained from Atlantis in terms of scriptural relevance. But anyways, the Upanishads are basically commentaries on that whole idea and understanding what the Rig Vedic hymns were, which were creational myths, cosmic myths. Where did we come from? Where are we going? Why are we here? And they were basically that type of a document where they would describe that. Now, the Upanishads are exhaustive commentaries on that. This is what it is. You can read 5, or there's 1,000 pages, 500 pages of literature in that respect, where they go through each stanza or verse, and they will talk about what is this actually coming from, what is actually meant, what is it in respect to perception and whatnot. Now, why that's relevant is because from these Upanishads, there's officially about 108 of them. Some people say there's 2,000 of them. Some say that there's more that we'll never find. But the point is a very interesting system of a spiritual system, science if you will, came from these Upanishads called what we understand today as the Kundalini yogic system. And Kundalini yoga is a very important science because of this, because it is really the basis of much modern scripture that we have even in the Western world today. The concept of God creating the world in 7 days. Or in Revelations we have the 7 seals, the 7 keys, or you saw 7 trumpets. See, this is all very indicative to the fact that they're referring to something within the universe that has microcosms and macrocosms. In every system there seem to be 7 very important organs, or vital plexuses, if you will, within each organ. Whether it's a human body or whether it's even in an inorganic object like a rock or a water molecule or whatever it may be, then there seems to be 7 systems within each microcosm in the universe. And this is where the concept of the 7 comes from in the Bible, in the biblical sense, in the 7 seals, again, 7 trumpets, or you have, God created the world in 7 days. So the 7 seems to be a very important number in the modern world and also for a scriptural context. Now, why I'm saying that is it goes back to the Kundalini yoga system. Many of you are probably familiar with the 7 chakras in the human body, starting from the base, the Muladhara, all the way to the Sahasrara, which is up above the top. But what's interesting is when we apply, and this is really where yogic theory or meditation as such comes into application and manifestation into actually developing psychic powers. Because if we take that concept that I mentioned earlier in the respect of the physics, where we already have this electromagnetic force within us. It's nothing that we develop. If you're alive, you have it. Cool. So what you do is through your focus, through your efforts, and through your understanding, you concentrate on certain plexuses within the human body. And by doing so, after you basically burn away, as it were, or you rather shine light on certain wisdoms within the human body that we call the chakric systems in the Kundalini yoga systems, in the chakras, which are in the body respectively within the actual spine. And when you do that, you develop psychic abilities, and it's nothing actually unusual. It's nothing, and I even really hate to use the word magic a lot of times because people who aren't familiar with the term, they seem to get spooked out about the concept of magic because they think it's sorcery or black wizardry or whatever it is. They just think it's something demonic, something of the devil, or they think it's the magic, the trickery, we're going to play cards and I'm going to fool you by sleight of hand stuff. But it isn't. It's something that we all have within us already. It's just a matter of developing it. And a good analogy to that is, if we want to become bodybuilders, or anything like that, or if we want to run a marathon, then we already have the potential to run 15 miles, to run 20 miles. Most of us can't currently. I can't. But most of us can. It's just a matter of training. And that's the whole idea, is when we're meditating, or when we're concentrating rather, then we train these electromagnetic potentials via the will within our own body to concentrate on certain plexuses that will reveal the inner potentials that we already have. So it's not anything that we get by hapstance or that we're born with and nobody else can create it. We actually have the potentials within us already. It's a matter of utilizing a science or a system that has been prescribed to us to be able to realize it. It's like if you want to become a marathon runner, you get a personal trainer and they're going to tell you, I've been in this, I'll tell you what to do, I'll tell you how to stretch, what to eat, what time to get up. Right? And this is what a spiritual guru would do in us in the context of learning the Kundalini yoga system. They can look at your body, sometimes based on your natal chart. They'll say, you have these potentials, these proclivities, and this is what will help you expedite your spiritual path, particularly in developing psychic powers. And through your efforts of concentration, and of course understanding, reading scriptures has a lot to do with this, also breathing exercises, living a certain lifestyle, just like running a marathon or being a trainer or learning to run a 15-mile marathon or whatever it would be, you have to practice daily, you have to abide by certain principles so that your body can basically on a cellular level, even on a genetic level, start to basically be able to understand and absorb this concept. And through these concentrations, which really are meditations, one, through a series of events, through a series of experiences, will actually develop what we loosely term psychic powers, which again, we can call magic, but for a lack of, well, for lack of a better term, or for the sake of clarity, we'll just call them psychic powers, which is also magic. And that's really what I guess the idea about psychic development really is. It's about developing within you what you already have so that life, or the conscious experience, or the human experience within this physical body becomes that much more qualitative. Because we all know, how efficient is it to be able to, back when we used to have to send postal mail 100 years ago to somebody to communicate. Now we can pick up a cell phone and we can communicate much faster, much more efficiently. But now think about that, if everybody's pineal gland was totally open, completely open, you could telepathically communicate instantly, specifically to that person. And we've all, well, at least probably most of us, I'm assuming since we're here, so most of us probably have had some experience in this department. How efficient is it to be able to just communicate directly with somebody? You think, I was thinking about this person, or they called me, or I was thinking, you thought about this and I can feel this person's energy. And you can have direct, instantaneous communication, minus the borders, minus any kind of boundaries or anything of that respect. And that is really, again, that would be the justification for wanting to develop these psychic powers that we have within us. Because we do all possess them, whether you believe it or not. Everybody has the potentials in it, but it's exactly like running the marathon. Do you want to practice and train? And do you want to be able to run 15 miles, or don't you? You don't have to. Life, you're not, it's the quality of life, though. And that's exactly, when you do run a marathon, maybe you feel better about yourself, you sleep better, you get all that energy out. Physiologically, you feel better because your blood alternates through your body. Your mind might think a little bit sharper, and life is just a little bit more qualitatively substantial, better, if you will. And so that's the whole basis, and again, the justification for why somebody would want to develop any of these psychic powers is because the quality of life becomes that much more substantial, because you do truly start to begin to be harmonious with your environment, not only the universe, but your immediate environment. Your intuition can tell you if a situation is good or bad. If a circumstance is good or bad for you, if it's favorable to you, you can communicate instantly. If sometimes even a seership. I personally know people who can see into the future, and it's not a matter of potential, but they can tell you you're going to meet somebody, and this is minus astrology. I'm not even talking about astrology like where they say, let's look at your chart, your North Node's going to be in Scorpio in the next 2 months, stay away from these environments. I know literally people that can look at you, they'll look above, and they'll tell you things that will happen, and they will happen most of the time. Now, that goes into the whole question of fatality versus destiny and will and whatnot. But the point I'm trying to make is these things are very real. And how qualitatively better is your life if you can look into a situation and just tell yourself, this is good for me, this is bad for me. Because at the end of the day, it is all quality of life. We want life not necessarily to be easy, but the quality. This is why we choose one partner over many partners as we get older, or why we want a good career for ourselves, or why we want health for ourselves as we get later in life. Because it's all about the quality of the experience. And with that said, again, I know I'm just reiterating, but this is the reason why somebody would be interested in developing these psychic powers within oneself, is because the quality of the experience becomes that much more substantial. The human experience becomes that much more substantial. Now, with that said, again, the question arises, how does one actually go about doing it? And there's been a number of systems throughout the centuries of the millennia that have come to this revelations where one could actually do this. The Kundalini yoga system is a great system because that one is probably the most lucid in the respect of actually being able to do this. It'll tell you what type of mantras to chant, what type of mudras, which are positions, what type of asanas, which again are postures or positions to be in to be able to develop these psychic powers. And there are also, and again, there are certain scriptures, not only Eastern scriptures, but also Buddhistic scriptures. There's also, of course, Sufism, which is mystic Islam, that goes into these stuff. And then, of course, Gnosticism, which is mystic Christianity that started at a few years right after Jesus Christ had died, the whole branch of it, because the Council of Nicaea was trying to suppress certain mystic information that Jesus most likely didn't teach, that again was suppressed later down by the church for political reasons. But the point is that within ourselves, we do really have a potential that's extremely great. And the fact that you could even sit here and listen to it means that it is a feasible possibility to realize those things. It really is. And so, with that said, I encourage people to look into these scriptures, to look into these ideas, these modalities, and through yourself, through your own efforts, through your own pursuits, figure out what type of path would be the best for you to develop yourself. We see this saying all the time, and this is exactly what the saying means. Know thyself. And this is exactly what that saying means, is know thyself, is basically go deep within yourself, concentrate on yourself, introspect very deeply, try to figure out who you are, not only on a heart level, not only on a mental level, but the entire apparition of your body. Figure it out, because if you know that, you can control it. And if you control yourself, you in essence do control the universe, because you are a part of the universe. You're not something separate. You're not like, I'm an individual and this is this. This is what the perception of the mind makes you think. But in reality, as quantum mechanics now even insinuates, is that you are actually part of that perception, that experience. And the reason we have so much limited power right now is because we forgot that, because we think that the individual body is actually all there is to it. And we're always looking outside like, here's the universe. I'm here and everything else is around me, which is actually a misperception of the mind, and that's actually the result of why we are so feeble within our energies and so weak within our energies. So again, I encourage people to experiment into these concepts, these ideas. Take it upon yourself when you're alone or with a partner to experiment in these particular dogmas, if you will, or these philosophies, these scriptures, and practice something that feels right with you, something that resonates with you, and see what happens. I think you guys will be very intrigued. Are there any questions for now?
When you speak of magic, what have you come to? Like, what have you developed so far with yourself?
Well, for myself, I do a type of breathing exercise, which is prescribed in the Kundalini yoga system, and it's a type of breathing exercise called Bhastrika pranayama. And with my efforts, I have basically realized. I mean, there's a lot of experiences that I've actually had. I've seen, everything from, I don't want to, lack of a better term, flying apparitions before going to sleep. I've had extremely good dreams, dreams that were more lucid within the sleeping state than within the waking state. That was another benefit. Prominent flashes before the eyes during meditation and also afterwards. And above and beyond that, the experience of lucidity. Meaning that basically, a lot of times when we're focused in our day-to-day life, you just see things that are in front of you and you just experience things that are in front of you. But when you are able to concentrate all those mental energies via meditation, via breathing exercises, then you start, and some of you might have seen this, where there's 1,000 eyes everywhere and you can kind of see everything, you can kind of feel everything within your body, within your mind, and it's not a mental thing necessarily, but rather it's an experience that you as a human being have as a result of these, the practice and the meditation. So among many other experiences, that's probably one of the more prominent ones that I've had.
And do you think you'd be able to demonstrate anything to anybody out here when you're finished with the lecture?
I like to do it at night more than the daytime. I don't usually do it at night.
And what is it that you demonstrate?
Bhastrika pranayama.
Which
it's
is?
It's a type of breathing exercise.
And physically, like, how would they be able to see, like, evidence of you developing something? What would it do?
The physical evidence, which I've demonstrated to some people, would be, for example, would be the ability to, for example, be able to determine what they're thinking, which has happened on a number of occasions that people that know me, without any insinuation, without any bodily gestures, basically be able to, for lack of a better term, thought read or mind read, basically, people, which has happened on a number of occasions. Some of the more prominent, if you will, some of the more prominent features has been being able to, I guess, being able to manipulate and control the not the electromagnetic force, but the life force within the body itself, which Vivian remembers. I showed her, and also Katie. I showed them firsthand where you can actually touch people and have a surge through conscious will, a surge of energy, which feels not only like heat, but kind of a very light electric pulse surge from my hand to their hand. And again, that's a byproduct of these types of meditations.
And you said by night. Why would you rather show that like at nighttime?
Well, I do the practices at night because my mind is more easy. Because it's more at rest, first of all, because this whole game, this whole objective is to have a calm mind so that you can concentrate the rays of the mind. During the day, we're oftentimes thinking about everything too much. So what I do is, at night, when I'm relaxed, it's a lot easier to concentrate at night. And also the energy in the ambience at nighttime is much more fluid and not as chaotic. So that's why I prefer to do it at nighttime.
How long do you spend with this breathing thing?
The meditations?
Yeah.
Generally about an hour each day, and it ranges because when one meditates, you want to remember it's the quality of the meditation, not the quantity. There's some people that do it for 3 hours and it isn't of complete avail because if you're sitting in a posture with your eyes closed, you're doing some kind of a mudra, but your mind's everywhere. It's thinking about bills or car payments. And you're better off not even doing it. You're better off just getting whatever you got to do out of your mind, go back to it, even spend 5-15 minutes, and really realize the quality of the experience rather than the quantity of the experience. So when I go, I generally will go anywhere from 15 but up to an hour. And recently it's been about 1 hour sessions. And the breathing itself is what I do these rapid inhalations, exhalations, and then on the last inhalation I'll hold my breath for about 3 minutes, and with the intention of focusing it on certain plexuses or psychic points within the body. So yeah.
Do you have an item or a pendant or something that enhance your vibrations or enhance your meditation?
I don't, but I know what you're talking about. There are a lot of necklaces or talisman. I know individuals that even take intentional water prior to meditation. I know there's actually a very good friend of mine. He does this type of, he'll take the intentional water, and it does help raise vibrations. It does help facilitate it, absolutely. My thing is, I try and stay away from inducing, if you will call, I'm trying to figure out the appropriate term for it, but trying to introduce foreign elements into it, because my personal objective would be, via the will, to have absolute control over those things, and not necessarily have a facilitation thereof. So, you can take ayahuasca, you can take mushrooms, and they will give you real spiritual experiences. DMT and all these types of substances have been proven to crack open the pineal gland, give you legitimate spiritual experiences, reach people from the past or people that have passed over. And that's fine if that's what you're looking for. Maybe you're just looking for verification, validation. Maybe you just want to have an experience and not necessarily devote 1 year, 5 years, 10 years of your life to these practices. So because of that, I don't use any supplements to do my meditations. It's pretty much me and my postures, breathing exercises, and then through the will just attempting to concentrate, because you can, and they're helpful. They're definitely helpful, especially if you're getting started. Intentional water is a good thing. Talismans are a very good thing. A lot of people will use beads, not only rosary beads, but also shamans. They use beads that helps them with their mantras and their japas and stuff like that. But I don't. No, I just breathe and concentrate.
What's intentional water?
There was basically, it's based off of the concept, if you remember Dr. Emoto from Japan. He was basically responsible for sending certain intentions towards water and then taking microphotography of the water as they freeze, as the water crystals freeze. And the big revelation to that was showing that not only does water have memory, but it actually reacts to our intentions, meaning that if we have negative or angry intentions or we're very frustrated, the crystal, when it freezes, will actually demonstrate that in the freezing process, meaning that if you just send really negative or angry, harsh energy, or I hate you, at the water, you freeze that water, it'll look brown, disfigured, darker. It basically will look asymmetrical, very asymmetrical. And if you send very loving energy towards the crystals prior to freezing them, with intention, it's coming from the heart. It's not just a mental thing. It's coming from the heart, and you're really feeling this energy, projecting this energy onto the water. Then it will freeze in hexagrams or, you know, in 8-shaped stars or whatever it will be, but the point is it's very symmetrical, it's very, very crystalline. The structures in general will basically formate in a much more symmetrical fashion and just looks more, for lack of a better term, aesthetically beautiful. And so it was demonstrated by Dr. Emoto, which most of you have probably heard in this room, that our intention has so much to do with the structure of the water, and because our bodies are 80-90% water, then it also helps with the molecular structure, the genetic structure of our bodies to heal itself, or to manifest wishes more rapidly, or basically just keep the spiritual, mental, and physiological dynamic of the body more attuned with things when you send good intention towards the water. And again, you know, this is probably why, if you remember throughout the ages, then priests always bless the water. Why? You know, apparently they knew something back then that we're, you know, us commoners, are now just starting to figure out again. And so the whole basis of this intentional waters, there's an individual that I know. If you want to talk to me later, I can give you his card. He's out in the San Fernando Valley, and there was an individual in India that he met that gave him beads, and these beads have the energy, supposedly, to reverse the aging process. You know, take it for what it's worth, but allegedly this particular sage in India gave him beads that when dipped in water, it is imbued with the energy of reversing the aging process. And you take it for what it's worth, you know, I'm not, you know, you take it for what it's worth. But there is something to the water, you know, that when I, prior to, if I do a certain type of meditation, or if I'm trying to basically manifest something, I do feel it more potently. That's, you know, it's true, and that's my experience. I've taken the water, I've gone to meditation sessions with him and alone. The million-dollar question, is it subjective, or is it the water doing it, or is it both? I mean, nobody really knows, but I guess that would go back to the question that the young lady over there had. Is it supplement doing it? You know, is it the beads doing it? Is it the talisman doing it? Is it the, you know, the energy necklace doing it? Or is it you doing it? Or is it a combination of both? I think people should try it because, again, there's not one right way of doing it. You know, there's not one right way of reaching spiritual enlightenment. There's many different ways of doing it. And if that's your way, cool. You know, that's what works. Maybe most people wouldn't like breathing exercise the way I do it. It's too intense, or it's too frightening to hold your breath that long. Maybe it's too uncomfortable. Maybe physiologically, for whatever reason, they can't do it. Whatever, you know. And so maybe using supplements to assist your meditation would be the way. So I think, you know, you should definitely try it. It's just water. You know, nothing's going to happen if you drink it. So that's basically what the intentional water does. It amplifies the intention that you have. So whatever, prior to taking it, you focus on, this is what I want, and when you take it, that water going through you, pulsating throughout the systems, it's supposed to assist, it's basically supposed to assist the amplification process of that intention via the water because it's distributed out throughout your body.
What's your current diet, and how do you feel about playing a role in
Diet? Well, I'm pretty much, I do like coffee. Yes, I am caffeine because my blood, my overall blood level is not blood level, but blood pressure is kind of low. And I've noticed if I have no caffeinated beverages, then I will sometimes experience headaches, even if I sleep good, even if I drink a lot of water, even if I eat good, then I will have headaches. So the caffeine kind of helps offset that for me. The whole idea of diet, I believe you should eat whatever makes you feel good that doesn't have bad consequences. That's what I think, because everybody's physiology is totally different. What works for me will not work for you. What works for you will not work for me. You know, this whole, you know, and I emailed people this same exact question some months ago. She was a vegan, I believe, or a vegetarian, and you know, she asked me about eating meats, and you know, there's a lot of vegans or vegetarians that aren't, I mean, if you've noticed, ever seen people who are vegans for many years, you know, a lot of times they don't look as healthy as they would like to look or would like to promote. You know, they're like, oh, I'm, you know, doing the right thing, I'm only eating, you know, purple grass and cheese that doesn't cast a shadow, or whatever it may be, you know. And when you look at their physiology, you know, their skin looks dry, you know, they could be maybe even 35 years old, no drug use. So it's not, you know, drugs that are inducing this, but it's, you know, dry skin, wrinkly skin, baggy eyes, dried out hair, whatever it is. And you can just tell just by looking at them, their nails might be flaky. That's, these physiological degenerations are a byproduct of your diet. So again, you can believe what you want to believe about vegetarianism or red meat or this or that or this or it's immoral, whatever it may be. But ultimately, I eat whatever makes me feel good that doesn't have adverse consequences. Meaning that if I eat it, it's like, because then, some people say, well, I could do heroin. No, don't do heroin because, or any of those types of drugs because the effects of them are terrible. And that's what I think people should keep in mind and this is actually, that's a good question because this goes directly in conjunction with the whole know thyself philosophy because knowing what your body is receptive to and what it's not receptive to is basically a part of knowing thyself. Because if you see what kind of energies make your body excited or depressed or lethargic, it really, when you start analyzing it, you can actually tell that, not only physiologically, like maybe I have weaker kidneys or stronger kidneys, or maybe my heart is not that strong, or maybe it is, or maybe I have lung issues, then you can focus on that part to make yourself healthy. And of course, it would expedite the spiritual process. Therefore, after you realize that you have certain infirmities or certain strong strengths within your body. So, to answer your question, I basically eat anything that doesn't have adverse consequences, and that, it isn't the utopic diet that most people preach, I can tell you that much.
I notice also it helps create a state of awareness and being very aware
Absolutely.
of everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, and this goes back to when she was asking about the intentional water, food is basically the same thing, and there was, that made a good point about that is the Celestine prophecy. And again, Roman Catholicism knew about that for many centuries, if not millennia, but, when you eat your food slowly, let it digest, and you also imbue it with good energy, a thankful energy, because you are kind of sacrificing a dynamic of the universe for your own sustenance, for your own well-being, then if you imbue it with a certain energy that is not asimilar to the intentional water. So you're absolutely right. Being grateful for it, being aware. Something hurts you really bad. Why? What are you lacking in your body that's creating that negative reaction? And then a lot more about yourself. Because I've been doing this for actually many years as a result of headaches. When I was 21, I used to just get these gnarly headaches, like bad headaches. And so, through that process, I realized that I would have to drink more water. And I've realized that, fructose corn syrup actually blocks certain enzymes within yourself. That's the reason people are obese. It's actually not sugar. Because sugar itself versus corn syrup, even though they're both classified as carbohydrates, are actually two completely different things. See, a lot of people don't catch that. Where they say, oh, you stay away from the sugars. The sugars are what's the problem. No, the fructose corn syrup, which they both classify as carbohydrates, are actually what causes it because it blocks certain enzymes within the body to be able to break down fat and then store. And it also clogs up your kidneys. And it also does something to your brain neurologically where you start having vast amounts of ADD, the fructose corn syrup. And this has all been scientifically proven. So it's not, it's not a conspiracy theory or, some kind of a stab at the GMO industry. I mean, these are things that have been scientifically proven to be fact, which would make sense,
Alterations in genetics.
It's the alterations in genetics, and exactly. So again, taking those foods, being aware of what it does to you, and then either embracing certain meals or certain nutritional contexts to make yourself feel better, but also then to proliferate the spiritual practices. Yeah.
Why is it that, if a person's not, quote, a psychic, yet when they shake your hand, they turn around and just like, well, hi, I'm Jim, nice to meet you, Joe. And Joe all of a sudden says, Jim, you better be careful with this, or you got to do this, and this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is that when that person has, is it a gift, or what is it?
I hate to use the word gift because it sounds exclusionary. Exclusive to that particular person, meaning that this person has the ability and the other person don't. Because again, we each possess these abilities. And they are very legitimate bestowments or boons that the individual has. When people do this, people can actually see, in this particular case that you mentioned, it reminds me of individuals that they see circular energy patterns behind you that represent your kidneys, your heart, your stomach, thyrax, whatever it may be, and they can tell based off the color how well functioning it is. And again, I know people that know exactly what you're talking about. They can shake your hand, they know nothing about you, and they'll be like, oh, work on your stomach. What do you mean work on my stomach? I'm not overweight, I digest food regularly, but maybe you're lacking a certain bacteria in your stomach that helps break down food that's not allowing it, that will eventually in 5 to 10 years maybe cause ulcers or cancer, whatever it may be. And again, the psychicness of that comes as a byproduct of breaking down the field of perception, because that's a very important thing to remember. The reason that we don't have psychic abilities as such now, or some of us have, and we don't understand why we have it or how to develop it, is, believe it or not, it's actually you causing the problem, not so much anything else. It's the perception in the mind causing this block, this bridge, this wall between what we think the world is and what it actually is. And this is why meditation is good, again, because it helps break down that wall. It helps see things for what they really are. Not only for the perception that you've interjected something with, by basically seeing a person, you are prejudiced or a preference, and this is what they say when you're developing these psychic powers, is that you have to learn to be in the middle, not indifferent, because indifference is indifference. You don't care. You see, you're not trying to not care. You're trying to see things for what they really are. Nothing is really good or bad. That's a perceptional something, a vision that you have of things. There's really, as they say, there's no such thing as good or bad, right or wrong. Ultimately speaking, it's just one. And though you hear that statement being thrown around all the time, everything is one, God is one, love is one, you hear this, frequently within these New Age communities, then people really don't believe it, because at the end of the day, you still have your own perceptions, your own understandings. And to understand what things are as such, you really have to slowly eradicate the personality within yourself. That's the key. And that's a scary thing, because most people believe via their experiences that they are a certain type of person, but you're really not that person at all. I don't know if that makes sense, but as we go through the stage of life, and this goes back to like natal charts also as well, when we're born, we have certain karmic past lives that we come into this world with. Hence why some of us are more intelligent, some of us are more loving, some of us are more artistic, or whatever it may be. And as we go through the process of life, then of course environmental circumstances will affect us to a certain degree. If you get raped, then you're going to be probably afraid of men. Or if you get in a bad car accident as a child, you might have phobias of driving on the freeway. Whatever it is. So circumstances do, in some, but not absolutely, but they do affect our perceptions of things. But see, that's exactly the point. The key goes back to understanding perception. Because what your experience was as an individual in relation to the outside world was just an incident. It was an experience. It wasn't the truth as such. But our personality, through those experiences, which actually develops our personality, makes us believe that the world is a certain way. And when you project impressions about what you think things are versus what they actually are, that's where the problems come in. And this is why so many people are not happy in life, or they're not successful, or they get sick, they get diseases. Because they constantly project what they believe the world is versus what the world actually is. So, in order to develop, again, the psychic powers in reference to your question, that's exactly what happens, is via the meditation process, this screen, this illusion, if you will, gets thinned out through the meditation process, and then you actually can see the energies, because it is all energies. It's not named, it's not form, it's just energies. And you can actually see past that via the psychic development experience. And Vivian, are we timed?
We are time.
Okay guys, we're going to take a small 15-20 minute intermission and then a Q&A session afterwards. To recap, for those of you that are new, or for the audience on YouTube that's watching this video, we ended on one of the ideas that the intentional water is, it was a question about intentional water, whether it's a subjective experience in the context that our intentions, when projected on something, actually change the molecular compound of the water itself, or was it strictly the water actually coming back to us and basically reflecting the energy that we gave the water itself. So it wasn't so much that we actually changed it via our intentions, but it was that the perception of us changed based on what we emanated outwards. And again, it is a subjective question, because is it the mental impression that's doing it, or is it actually our intention that's creating these molecular changes within the compound of water, or within basically the perceptual gamut of our minds itself. And I guess, without too much meditation without too much introspection, it's truly a difficult subject, because it's like, I guess if you take it on faith and this program works for you, basically emanating certain intentions, getting something back in return, then it's good enough to know that tool and utilize that tool in your life to have a more qualitative experience as a human being, because again, we don't know. Most of us don't know how a car engine works, yet we all drive. Most of us don't know how cell phone technology works, yet we all use a cell phone for our benefit, because it makes our life that much more efficient and qualitative. So I think, to reiterate on that particular question prior to us leaving, it's more important not necessarily to understand the why, but the fact that we do know when you emanate intentions, they are reflected back at us, whether we actually change it or not, or whether it's just a subjective experience, or whether it's actually us seeing us back in the object that we reflected the intention on, then that's the key thing to remember, is that it does work, and just to basically emanate that type of intention on objects. So yeah, that would answer that question. What other questions did we have? I know there were a few more questions. Yes?
I was curious, when you ever had a shift that got you into all this, or something that sparked you and really ignited your fire?
Yeah. With inspiration to actually get me involved in this, I don't really know exactly when it happened, but I would say that each of us, we go through our own experiences, and we're not really aware of when it happens, but it does happen. And for me, I know the first time I ever felt inspired with the same type of energy that led me to ultimately study astronomy, stars, celestialism, if you want to call it this, in my teens, then reading books like Brian Greene's The Elegant Universe, which inspired me to get involved in quantum mechanics, physics, which is why I went the formal path of academia, mathematics, physics, and then ultimately I dropped that, going into now psychic development, mystic scriptures, that kind of stuff. The first time I could remember that inspiration actually is when I was about 9 years old, looking at the sky, looking at a star. I could remember that's when the first shift or inspiration to pursue something cosmic in that respect. Because yeah, I think we just really don't know that much, and I think until you go through the formal system of life, you go through the school of life, and then you realize how much people present themselves to know things, yet you look at their lives and you're like, but they're not where they want to be, or they're not happy, or they're not this or that, then your logic alone should tell you that you need to look outside of whatever is prescribed to be the right way. And when I would go through that path of trying to find truths, then it happens in layers of ascension. It doesn't really happen, today we're here and tomorrow we're enlightened masters and there was nothing in between. Life doesn't happen like that. And I've said this to actually some people that emailed me in respect to the question that you have. I say that the truth as such is in life's journey itself. It's not in a book. It's not in the scriptures per se. It's not even in a singular meditative technique, but it's rather being introspective in the stages of life, in the day-to-day life, seeing why you do what you do. Why do you have certain perceptions? Why do you have certain interpretations about things? Why do you hold certain relationships to people, whether they're good or bad? Why do you do what you do every day? You see, and I think if you apply the introspective quality within yourself, which is inherently a type of meditation, then you start to understand yourself more and more. And as a result of that question, that desire to understand things, when, like you said, when did it happen? I think it always happens to all of us. We're just not consciously aware of it. The fact that you're here interested in something called psychic powers, where people might have the fantasy of levitating, bringing dead objects back to life, moving objects with the mind, whatever it is. And I think it's all feasible possibility. I genuinely do. But the fact that that is even something of your interest shows that that's part of this
this notch of evolution that I think we all come together, we experience something, everybody's going to take something totally different away from it. Some people might not understand it and it'll be sitting in their subconscious for 5 to 10 years. And then 5 to 10 years from now, they're going to be like, oh my God, that's what he was talking about back then, and now it's helping me in my growth. Some people understand it right away. Some people will say, oh, that's cool, but I already knew that. And so it doesn't really happen. And I think that's an important thing, a lesson to take away for each seeker. It doesn't happen, today I'm here and tomorrow I'm here. It's not like this big revolution. It's like the 2012 thing. Agree with me or disagree with me. I remember everybody says it was going to change on 2012. And then some people said, do you feel the shift? I felt the shift from yesterday to today, if that answers your question, So did a date do anything? My personal opinion is it's the official demarcation from things being predominantly Piscean to Aquarian. That's what I think 2012 was about. Now, did anything change? Not really. I mean, at least I didn't see it. Maybe some people say it did, but again, is that a subjective experience? Are you believing what you want to believe because you invested 5 years into your life pumping that agenda? It's a personal question. But it doesn't, again, the inspiration, I think the fact that you're already here means that you're inspired. You're looking for something else. Now, how you proceed on your path to self-realization, to enlightenment, to understanding the self, with a capital S, as they call it, it happens in everyday life, when you get a job, when you get a car, because everything that you do is really an attempt to understanding the absolute. You're not aware of that. Most people aren't aware of that. But every single thing that you do really is an attempt to try to understand the absolute. But of course we fail because we try to use, as they say, a garden hose to put out a forest fire. And the forest fire in this case is an allegory for the absolute, for this great immense energy that we're all aware of. We know it's there, but we just don't know how to reach it. And some of it's perception, some of it's lack of belief, some of it's just we got to go through the process. And every single thing that we do, whether we get a nice car, we have nice clothes, or we want to meet certain people, it is, in some regards, an attempt at understanding that absolute that we're connected with. And it is until we go through the process of life, we start mitigating our perceptions on things. We start letting go of the prejudice that we have that we were so sure was right when we were 15 or 20, because when we're younger, we're absolutely sure that our ideologies are right. And we know that if this was the way the world would be, everything would be cured. And we're sure these type of people are bad and these type of people are good. And as you get older, you just realize that life isn't like that. It isn't. Like, your mind is really your own problem. And the mind, with the perceptions, even though we need it for now to function, in everyday society and to be healthy individuals, whatever that is, then it is actually, and that's the irony of it, is actually the problem that's preventing us from seeing the absolute behind it. So, again, in brief, to answer the question, what inspired me? I don't know. I think we're all inspired. I just think most of us are not aware of the fact that we're inspired, But to me, it happens in gradations. The first time I could remember it, I was really young, and it was because I looked at a star. Why? I don't know.
Basically, it's direct experience, not more of just reading or...
It isn't. Reading is the tool that gets you there. Like, if you want to rebuild a car engine, what inspired that desire to build? And then you're going to use tools, in this case, a 9mm monkey wrench would be your book. That'd be your scripture. That would be the guidelines, the instructions. This is how you do it. And then you go through your processes or your path that you chose to do. But it's not the inspiration itself. When I read the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the commentaries on that, very exhaustive commentaries. I read them about 3 times over and over. That's the big million-dollar question, if you will. How or why does one even aspire towards God, if you want to call it that? One day you're just here, or maybe through a series of failures, or maybe you get a vision, or maybe there's a point in time where your perception in the mind gets thinned out enough that you see that there's something much greater beyond this thing we call life, or the mundane, regular, day-to-day life. And so aspiration or inspiration to move towards the absolute, or God consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, is a mystery itself, because you don't know when, at what point, what did you do, to want to move the consciousness predominantly in that direction, to study scriptures or to practice any kind of spiritual belief or whatever it is. And it's a mystery. It is a mystery, you know. Nobody can really say why it happened, you know. Exhausting certain karmic proclivities, just had enough with regular life. You know, you see the futility in life, day-to-day life, and you see that, you know, granted that it has its values and its qualities, it's not going to reach the things that your imagination really desires to attain. It's a mystery, you know. No, you really can't say. To me, like I told you, when I was young, that's when it first happened to me, and it comes. You know, sometimes I even lose the aspiration. I won't do anything for a short while, and then it'll come up again, maybe in a book, maybe in a dream. I've had very potent dreams that feel more real than this particular reality, where I can come out of a certain dream state, and I can hold an emotional frequency for days on end. I can't even do that in the waking state, but it'll happen in dreams. And there is such a thing called initiation via dreams, because our perception and, you know, circumstances in the waking state won't allow us to do certain things, to be placed in certain environments that we would otherwise utilize for our conscious development. Because we have prejudice, we have fears, maybe we don't need to go to the places and meet the people that we need to meet. So sometimes that is a theory, and I believe in that theory, that we are initiated in dreams because of the fact that, you know, the circumstances in the waking state just won't allow us to do certain things, to meet certain people, to experience certain people. And so you can experience certain things in dreams, take them back into this waking condition, and then you ask yourself, well, which one's more real, you know? Because if you've actually experienced something so potent that you've come out of a dream and you were in the exact position that you were in the dream, lying in your bed, you feel those emotions, you have those thoughts, then the question comes into what's really even real. You know, was the dream more real? Was the waking state more real? Were they both fake?
I suppose that's what I meant by the shift, something so profound that question.
It's the profundity, sure. It could be the profundity of the experience. To me, I don't know. I mean, I never saw so much value alone in this particular reality, because it isn't. If you really start analyzing everything, it's just total hypocrisy across the board. You know, the people that are preached to be the worst are usually the best, and the people that are preached to be the helpers and the savior are oftentimes the worst in terms of what they've done, you know. And it's a classic example of that is, like, you know, gang member and police officers. And it's no offense, I know there's a lot of good police officers out there, but it's not the character of the police officer, it's the fact that the force, the policing institute, forces you to do something in society, and it's there to maintain policies, not so much protect people. You know, and then when you take gang members that at least have some sense of loyalty, maybe they help people, you know, because, you know, you don't know. You know what they promote to you, but you don't necessarily know how it is when you're on the inside seeing it for what it is. And then, you know, most people will run to police officers when statistically most of them probably have, you know, as a police force, they've probably shot more civilians than gang members. You know? And then you ask yourself, well, wait a second, you're saying you're here to help. We all got the impression they're here to help. But you've killed more people than the bad guys, if you just take it as a black and white thing. You know, when you start analyzing life like that all the way through, this existence really is filled with only contradictions almost universally across the board. You know, the richest people are the ones that don't deserve it, and the ones that work the hardest have nothing. You know, I think we've all seen that. You know, so I think it's also through, because I'm an analytical person, then it's happened in conjunctions with arbitrary revelations, but also through deduction, you know, because I was really big into the poli-sci stuff when I was in my teens. And, you know, I'm just like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't get it, you know. And I remember there was another classic example about home ownership, in which, you know, Vivian and I have talked about, and I just thought it's strange, because if you have to pay property taxes on a house, you never actually own the house. It's illegal to own property. Because if you don't pay it and they seize it, that shows that there's a fiduciary contract between you and the actual owner that you basically have to indefinitely pay. It's servitude is what it is. And so I'm like, well, why would you even want to own a house? I think because you don't really own it. What's the difference? I guess it's an image. You know, you can call yourself a homeowner. I mean, it looks cool, I guess. But the obligations, you know. So yeah, it happens in phases. You know, it happens in phases. It's like what we were talking about earlier is with somebody outside, is, you know, the spiritual path, it isn't like, again, and that's an important thing to understand, it's an individual pursuit, first of all. Everybody's going to go through their own thing, the way they're going to go through it, based on your personality, your understanding, your desire to want to ascend, based on your past karmic experiences. It's not going to be this thing where your desire, you know, because you have this inflammation inside your heart that says, wow, I know that there's something beyond, I'm going to pursue it. And then everything's beautiful after that. And that's, you know, this is what they call an overzealous attitude, or they call it the what is it? There's actually a specific term, believe it or not, in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras where they call this they call it the God hero, where people get inspired. They have legitimate revelations. Everybody's capable of having legitimate revelations. It's all within us. And then they go on this mission in life where they preach about, I've seen the light, and, we've all seen these types of people, and they have genuine revelations, but do they have the truth? No. They got a taste of it. They mistake it to be liberation or that they found God consciousness, and now they're preaching their truth to the rest of the world in almost, forced fashion. And because of that, the individual really does have to make their own path, and that's the tricky thing. Is like you have to learn from me, from him, from him, from him, from her, and through certain branches, because to me, the truth is scattered everywhere in pieces, and you have to kind of pick it up. Certain things will just resonate with you, and certain things will not resonate with you, and that's okay. It doesn't mean it's inaccurate. It just means, again, for who you are, the times that we're born in, in this particular incarnation, your karmic proclivities, past lives, the way you see the world, it's all basically going to dictate this is what you need to do to create that spiritual equilibrium within yourself. And that's an important thing to remember, because there really is no right way. As they say, all roads lead to Rome. And Rome being, not in the physical sense, but in the sense of spiritual enlightenment. There's many ways you can reach God consciousness, and that's even the branch of Kundalini Yoga and the respective psychic powers that we were talking about. Some say that it's, the path of Kundalini is called the path of enjoyment, because it's not absolutely necessary. But there is the sense that when you understand vibrations, then you do have the ability to levitate, genuinely levitate, move objects with the mind, create essentially substance, matter out of thin air or energy, because you understand the life force within it. And, again, these things are really, I know Vivian and Katie themselves, and, my parents and my brother, I had some experiences where through my meditative practices, I became aware, not developed. That's a key thing. You already have these things in you, but I became aware of energies that now, through will and concentration, I can pull out certain, I would call it the life force, if you want to call it that, the life force within ourselves, and be able to transmute it through concentration into, from the hands into the palms of other people, and they all feel it. There's never been a person that says they haven't felt it. So I know, and I don't tell them anything about it. I don't tell them what to think, what to experience. I say, here's my hands, tell me if you feel something. The first couple times I won't do anything at all, because I want to make sure that you're not telling me something that I want to hear or whatever it may be. And then when I do it, and then even when I focus on which hand I'm sending that energy, I think almost every time, with the exception of once or twice I've done it, people have, whatever I'm focusing on it, and they all say the same thing. First it's light vibrations, turns into heat, and then after that it's like a current, a very light current is what it is. Like electricity, but not electricity. It's like a cool breeze almost, but there's no, it's contact on contact, so there's no, wind blowing or anything like that. And, again, that's because I'm analytical and I want to know what it is. I want to know what the structures of these potentialities are. What is the vibration of solids, truly speaking? What is the vibration of water? What is the vibration of air? And through these types of concentrations, you can literally figure out what each element within the universe is. Because that, to me, that's what it's about. Is it absolutely required that one takes the path of Kundalini Yoga to become enlightened? No, absolutely not. You don't even have to go Eastern scripture at all. Some people have done it just through prayer on the concept of Jesus Christ and meditating on the love chakra, and they reach a certain stage. I mean, it does happen. A lot of the saints that you will read about in Roman Catholicism have reached these stages that may have never even heard of any Eastern scripture. But again, it comes back to that qualitative experience in life. The more abundance you have, which is a result of understanding the structures in the universe, the more qualitative the experience of life is. And that's why I think it's reasonable to pursue that. Yeah. Any other questions? Shoot. And then we'll go to you. Yeah.
Taking it back from the microcosm to the macrocosm.
Right.
The exterior, like the location that you're at when you're actually doing this, does it have any effect?
Location. What you mean, meditation?
Yeah, when you're doing your meditation or you're focusing or whatever the tools that you're using, your breathing and stuff like that.
Right.
When you're in, do you find that the energy in different locations affects your ability to do that?
Yeah, yeah. The general theory in respect to Kundalini Yoga, for example, is that, and this has actually to do exactly with the Tree of Life in the Kabbalah. You have the 10 Sephiroths that emanate, and then you have the 22 paths within the Sephiroths. The base chakra that you have isn't an independent light or vessel as such. It's actually a fraction of the next chakra, the second chakra, and then the Manipura chakra, then you have the Anahata chakra. And what happens is that you can find all of it within the third eye pineal gland, actually. All the chakras reside in there, and then they will descend in frequency down to the base chakra. So in other words, the third eye has all the chakras within it, but the base chakra doesn't necessarily have the third eye in it because they descend in quality, if that makes sense. And so does it? Yes and no. I guess it depends what is your objective. What do you want to actually do with it? Me, because I was interested in the psychic developments of power, and rather than focusing on each individual chakra, Kundalini Yoga theory prescribes that if you do open the third eye, you automatically understand all of the subsequent 5 chakras that are underneath it, because essentially those chakras are within the pineal gland. So rather than doing chores, individual chores, you can just go to the source, as it were, and once you break open the source, then you understand everything that proceeds out of it, which would be the subsequent chakras of that. So to answer that question, it comes back to what is your objective? Why are you doing what you're doing? That's the main question. And if it is to develop psychic powers, then me personally, I think that going towards meditating on the Ajna chakra, which is the third eye or the pineal gland, is the key source. Because if you understand that, that is, they say, where the will resides, the cosmic will. And these are, again, this gets into abstractions that's not easy for most people to understand, because even though we all have a will, if I ask you what is the will, nobody can really answer it. We all know we have a will because we can move our arms, we can drive a car, we can go to the bathroom, we can eat. But then when you actually try to figure out what the will is, nobody knows what the will is. Because what is the will? It's just something that nobody really knows. Well, the Kundalini Yoga theory prescribes, or basically says, that the will is that God within us. That's what the God actually is. And there's consciousness that flows into that will that allows us to animate and be who we are, act how we act. But if one becomes a sovereign, or understands or can control that will, which apparently resides in the pineal gland, then you not only become in control of all the cosmic forces, because you control that will, which then later emanates into those cosmic forces in due proportion, but you actually become, that's what true sovereignty actually is. You know, if you ever wonder, like, where the concept of royalty is, why are kings kings, or why are, very highly spiritual people apparently exempt from certain laws, the laws basically affect the human body because we resonate with those. But when you resonate with the higher reality, which in case this would be the pineal gland or the third eye, then you actually bypass, you're beyond that, if it makes sense. And one of the clues that one is beyond that, or a sovereign essentially has emancipated their will from phenomenal existence, is psychic powers. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are totally sovereign, but it's definitely a guide stone to say, yeah, this person has done their due proportion. Because if you have those tools, it's like college. We can all say we've been to college, but if somebody has a bachelor's degree and one has no accredited at all, most people are going to take the person with the bachelor's or the master's degree because it's quote-unquote proof that they've put in their dues. And that's kind of the same thing with spirituality in some context, that the ability to prove, or to rather demonstrate these psychic abilities, shows a certain spiritual attunement within the human body, if you would want to call it that, or relation to the absolute, that one has refined their consciousness to a certain extent that they do, in some respects, control the universal environment around them using the third eye. So does it matter? Again, what's your objective? What do you want? If you want peace and harmony, love, then you meditate on the heart chakra. If you want to understand everything and how it works, the theory is you go for the third eye. If you just want to levitate and be in control of the life force itself, the theory is you go on the Muladhara, which is the base chakra, because that's where the life force comes out of, as they say. It depends what your objective is, to answer the question. Yeah. Anything else? We had a question, though. Did you?
Yeah, I was
I was thinking about what you were saying in the universe of duality.
Right.
We're talking about at the break, two opposing forces and that sort of thing. And the latest thing in my reality is this dual reality that we live in, parallel reality.
Right.
And I was just wondering if it's like the vortexes that we were talking about, two opposing forces. I was wondering if the parallel reality is like that. If we need like an opposing force to be able to have this reality here.
Right. And that's a good question, but it comes back to, first of all, defining the terms, I think. What is a parallel reality or a parallel universe is, the big thing now in quantum mechanics. And when people say parallel universe, it's a very undefined term. It's an abstraction that basically there's a sequence of infinite possibilities or potentials within this universe that it's kind of like the butterfly effect. If we go this way, this is going to be the reality. If we go this way, this is going to be the reality. If we go up, it's going to be a different reality altogether. Basically depending on our choices that we make, the reality of the universe will manifest differently, whether good or bad, but essentially the reality will manifest differently based on the potentials or the choices that we make. Now, in reference to the question, I think, and this is what I personally feel, that parallel universes is more of an incomplete abstraction. It's right on some notions that there are infinite possibilities for us, infinite realities to experience within this universe. However, I don't think it's something like a void space and then you have a succession of universes. It's more one universe, and we, as conscious teardrops, if you will, within this ocean that we would call a universe, have a will to do certain things, and the realities already exist. The question is, if you want to utilize, through your will, you have a certain amount of consciousness, you can vibrate with certain realities that already exist. For example, if we're standing outside in the hallway, there's something going on in this room that you would have absolutely no awareness about if you were standing outside with the doors closed. However, outside, there's something else going on. And in the front of the building, there's something else going on. So we have three potential different realities just within that scope. And you're standing in the hallway not aware of any of the realities. And you as an individual, you can go to the back door and find out what's going on out there, or in here, find out what's going on in here, or in the front and find out what's going on in there. And it basically just came down to a matter of choice where you chose, via your will, to take this consciousnness into a certain vibrational pattern. You could do that with, good feelings. I felt like going there, or my intuition told me to go there, or I happened to stumble in there by accident. But the point is the potentials for anything already exist. You see, it's not so much like I'm going to create a parallel universe. I think that's a misnomer. I think that's not an accurate way of seeing it because it already exists. The question is, do you want to resonate with it? It's like, if you want to become a president, you don't say, I'm going to create a president. The presidency as a position already exists. The question is, are you going to work to try to vibrate with that particular frequency, to become that, basically to become that? That's the question. It's not so much that you're creating anything or fabricating anything. It's rather the fact that through the will, you're going to take your consciousness and resonate with a certain frequency that's going to put you in an environment or a reality, as it were. So to answer the question with parallel universes, I think parallel universes, and it's just my opinion and theory, I think it's not a complete perception, because the thing is, I would say there's one universe in that context with infinite possibilities. And this is what people, I think, call the parallel universe theory. Basically, you can do whatever you want to do, and of course the universe is going to change. If you had an accident on the freeway as opposed to coming here, your day would be a lot different. Is that a parallel universe? I guess, in theory, the potential for that could have happened, and maybe it is somewhere. But the point is the majority of that consciousness is in this particular reality, vibrating at this particular frequency. So it's more about understanding those dynamics of parallel universes rather than saying that these things exist and we'll never be able to reach them. Because then you do that whole, you screw with your mind type thing. You can't reach them. Of course you can reach them. If you can think of it, if you can fabricate it, if you can imagine the potential, it's a possibility. Now the question is, are you going to do it? It's like, we can go be bodybuilders and both have ripped muscles. We can think of it, right? But the question is, are we actually going to go do it? Are you going to go do it? That's the question. Are you going to realize those potentials or not? So that's what I think about parallel universes. Yes?
Is there any why you chose to spoke here, Masonic Lodge? How do you feel about?
It was Vivian's idea. No.
And the quote-unquote Illuminati, is there anything we should be thinking about? Should we just be focused on this spiritual growth and build?
Well, the Masonic idea, Masonic Lodge idea, it was actually a cusp, just off the cusp. I just decided I wanted to start speaking after I don't know, probably a good solid year sojourn that I had within myself. I just didn't want to do anything. I said, Vivian, hey, let's go do some kind of a speaking engagement, and this was honestly the byproduct of that. It was yeah. Yeah, I like it. I think it was really cool. But in terms of the Illuminati question, and I know there's a lot of controversy with the whole Illuminati thing. My personal opinion is anybody who's extremely powerful in this world will never show themselves to you, because that's the first rule of power is be mysterious. And if everybody knows about it, they're not the ones in control, I can tell you that much. Do they control some things like the music industry or like the entertainment industry? Sure, why not? But it's important to know that the first rule of power is keep yourself hidden. Because that's where power comes from, is mystery. And if everybody knows who you are, how tall you are, how smart you are, how healthy you are, there's that element of surprise is gone, and then people can attack you. So does the Illuminati exist? Of course they do. Why not? I'm not denying their existence. Do they control world affairs? To a certain degree, probably so. But, this whole business of exposing them, don't worry about it. Because the thing is they obviously know more than you do, since they're in the position you are and you are in the position you are, that's fine. But even if you expose them, it's like, a lot of these truthers, they expose the Bilderbergs, they expose the Federal Reserve, and it serves its purpose. I'm not saying it wasn't a fruitful effort, because it does, in some respects, galvanize people to search for more, so it does serve its purpose. It wasn't for no reason, but to terminate there and to say, let's keep exposing these people and find out who they are and where they live, why do you want to do that? Because the thing is, you have two options. Either you want information on somebody to destroy them. Are you going to do what they're going to do to you? Because they'll do it, but the thing is, we already know that, in wars, nobody really ever wins. It's like one person gets killed, and the crazier of the two is the one who rules, which ends up always falling back on themselves. They call it Sisyphus stone, which basically, your great efforts always end up falling back on you, which you see this throughout history of the world. Some nation conquers another nation, and their success became their failure. America's kind of going through that right now, But it's, I personally think be aware of it. It's good, but don't worry about it, because you're not going to be involved with those people, unless it's more important to understand, and this is why I got involved in the psychic stuff, is because years ago, and that probably happened when I was in my teens the first time, I remember saying to myself, it's obviously not about money, because if it was just about money, these bankers, Zionists, whatever you want to call them, would just eliminate the popes or these spiritual people. There has to be some power greater than money, than wealth, than political merit, if you will. And to me, if you have people like Bush bowing down to the Pope, kissing the ring, why? Why? Because if it was just about control and money, they can easily kill him and eradicate him within a day. But they don't, and they never have. Because apparently there's more power in understanding spirituality. And so, with that said, I always tell people, work on yourself. Because the thing is, if you want to overthrow, conquer, whatever you want to call it, even though that's never been my objective, you need to understand why people are where they are and why you are where you are. If you just sit back and point your finger, play the blame game, nothing's ever going to change, because the thing is, in the grand scheme of things, the universe, the God, or whatever you want to call it, nobody cares. Nobody. How many exposing these guys or this guys have you seen, and what has it done? I can safely say I think we're in a much worse position today than we were 10 years ago. And a lot of exposing has been happening since then. Why? Obviously, exposing by itself doesn't really do anything. It actually hurts you, because now you're aware of the negative and you start polarizing to the negative. How many people that say, oh, I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to go down this dark alley and I'm going to figure everything out for the betterment of everybody? Every single one of them, they fail in their own negativity, because you see, there's a saying about that, true. The tree of life becomes the tree of death, because you lose this sight of objective by trying to figure these things out. And the point is people are where they are because they know something else that you don't. What is that knowledge? What is that spiritual wisdom, that they know that you don't, that puts them in that power that they're at or that position that they're at. Because I don't think people control anybody. I don't think human control is possible. I think control is a byproduct of your ignorance and laziness. And people, you have to let them control you so that you can function in your life. I really do believe that. That doesn't mean it's going to stay like that forever, because you have the potential to better yourself, like we talked about parallel realities. You have the moment today, you can better yourself today. You can start reading more, you can start meditating more, get involved in self-inquiry. Of course, pursue the types of things like we talked about, magic, to empower that consciousness. You can go travel the world and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, as they say, there's nothing permanent in this universe but change. But, you know, going down this dark rabbit hole and exposing people, I would stay out of it, because it doesn't matter, you know. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day, because even if you know them, you're not going to.
Amazing teacher, a really wise man, Manly P. Hall.
Yeah, oh yeah.
He was a Mason, and a lot of
He
people
was.
would never be exposed to him.
Right.
All this negativity surrounds.
Right. And it was to undermine the Masonry movement. That was Leo Taxtil, which was. I'm of the belief in the 18th century, when Masonry was becoming public to a lot of people that weren't in those circles, then the idea was, I think the Roman Catholic Church got spooked, because a lot of the wisdom they were telling, you know, not in allegorical form like the Bible, but they were telling people these are the secrets, if you want to call it that. And I think that spooked the Roman Catholic Church, because then all these hoaxes, if you want to call them, and all this bad PR, the press that, you know, the Masons were murderers and they were all into these sex sacrifices and devil worshippers. A lot of that was, and you can write this down and verify it for yourself, coming out of a guy named Leo Taxtil. Leo Taxtil was a Roman Catholic that later actually came out and admitted he was funded by the Roman Catholic Church to undermine, via humor, the whole Freemasonic operations that they were setting up. And, you know, that's the same thing with the Illuminati. It's like, all of it is theory. How much do you actually know to be fact? You see?
It's into the hypocrisy of, because we look at the Vatican and all the acclamations that they've heard
right.
about the same thing.
About the same thing. Everything that they blame the Freemasons for, they actually have done. Vatican rat lines, sex trafficking, you know, they've done it. There's proof of that, you know. And it's like, exactly, you know, and that's why, and that's my saying, you know, people who judge other people about things that they do, guarantee they probably do it themselves, and that's why they're throwing that kind of stuff. Because if you're not involved in that, you wouldn't know about it. But if you start throwing people, you know, this guy's a devil worshiper, he's into sex sacrifice and that kind of stuff, it's like, first of all, how do you know about that? You know, because obviously you're involved in that. And I've noticed that in my personal life, that people who accuse other people of doing stuff are almost always guilty of that themselves, and the person that they're accusing it is not. I've noticed that a lot of times in life. So, you know, the Illuminati thing, it's to me, it's a scapegoat that people, it's an easy scapegoat. It's like the Phantom that everybody's heard of but nobody's ever seen, you know. And it's easier to say something like, maybe I'm responsible for the mistakes in my life. Maybe my ignorance that led me into playing into this whole inflationary system where I am literally an economic slave. Maybe it's not my fault, but it has to be somebody else's fault, because we all like to think we're brilliant and intelligent, right? And we couldn't screw up anywhere. So it's just like what they've always done. It's like what you know, Christians did to the Jews in the 1800s. You know, who's responsible for this? Oh, the Jew guy. That's responsible. Or like they did to blacks. The black guy? Obviously, he's responsible for that. Or who? Oh, the Mexicans. You know, it's this pointing of the blame game when it's really people don't want to take personal responsibility, and they don't want to say, okay, but what did I play in this? Because, right, we're all in here together. It's not like I'm here and you're all separate. We're all interacting, and even though we are, in some respects, we perceive each other as individuals, it's not individuals, it's one whole. And that's really what spirituality is about, loosening up the individuality and seeing the whole. And once you can see the whole, it all becomes crystal clear.
Today, Joseph did a workshop on raw magic. We had a pretty good crowd on that. We thought we'd do some follow-up to that. And it was actually very well received. But Joe, I want you to clarify a few things. First of all, tell us, what is raw magic? What is magic? And what makes it raw? And it's R-A parentheses W, magic.
Well, Vivian, the concept behind this lecture was exactly as the name insinuates, raw magic, which actually has dual connotations. One, raw, meaning raw in its essence form, in its most rudimentary form, raw in that category, but also, you know, for the viewers that watched it, you see that we spelled raw, R-A, use parentheses and then W, which essentially insinuates the Ra, as in the sun god Ra, the Egyptian sun god Ra, which of course the sun itself represents a form of magic, basically. And so the whole idea was that it was a lecture that was describing the fundamentals of magic and how each of us possess that essence within us, where we can develop what would be called magic. Now, magic is basically a term which has been, I guess, abused, you can say, in the last 100 years, because most people consider it like sleight of hand trickery stuff. And of course, when I'm referring to it, the way I'm referring to it is exclusively psychic development, really, what we all have within us, and it's basically that ability to control and manipulate the life force within us, to be able to do, for lack of a better term, psychic powers, or whatever it would be, whether it's clairvoyant, clairaudient, levitation, moving stuff with the mind, so on and so forth. And so that's what the lecture was about. It was I thought, like you said, we had a really good turnout. I thought much better turnout than we had anticipated. And unfortunately, like last time, we didn't have enough time, which is why we're doing this follow-up. But it was a very good lecture, very good audience, and I think it was a success overall.
And I think that you should send out an alert to the attendees that were there that signed up that this show will be on the air, and it's a follow-up to that event.
Yes.
Because I know that there were a lot of questions that people had that we didn't have time to address.
Right.
There were people still trying to glom onto you at the end of the event to ask more questions, and we just flat out ran out of time.
Right.
We had to get out of the building and let them lock up and all that kind of stuff. And there's still unanswered questions, I'm sure, in some people's minds. So maybe we'll touch on them today. Hopefully we will. If not, they can always email you and I guess ask you then.
Absolutely.
And so when we get on the term of magic, Joe, what do you mean by like magic? Like when you think magic and you're going to use it as a tool to utilize in the world, what is magic?
Well, the idea of it, again, is really having the ability to come back to yourself and be able to consciously, willfully control that life force within you, that I don't even want to say it's an electrodynamic life force, because it isn't. It's more about the life force which is within ourselves, and the Hindus call this prana. The Asiatic cultures generally call this chi. It's basically the same energy, the same phenomenon within the body, that through certain practices, the individual actually becomes aware of them, and they're able to control these energies, for lack of a better term. And that's basically, when I'm referring to magic, it is really making that organic connection, not only to you, yourself, but also to your environment around you, and being able to communicate more efficiently with the fundamental forces around yourself and your environment, and also within your own body.
So then, thinking on the bigger picture, because this is like a very individualistic definition you just gave. So thinking on the bigger picture, theoretically, can the media and government and stuff utilize magic to influence people and culture and the things they do?
Well, not only do they, I think that they do, and I think that's why they even call it, because in the spiritual industry, we have things called channeling. I'm going to channel spirits. I'm going to channel entities, which spirits are basically informational resonance. And of course, when you watch TV, you're going to say, what channel am I going to go on to tap into certain frequencies, to tap into certain informations? And that's of course done through channels. The word media, I know there are some people that believe that media comes from mediator, and that's why we call the medias today what we call it, which is media, because it's a byproduct, or rather a shortening of its original term, that were people responsible for mediators. The problem is that press as such has existed much longer than television, because when we talk about newspaper, of course, that goes back to the 1500s, long before these alleged mediators existed. So I think it's an adequate definition, and of course it slips up because we call newspapers media. It is a source of media, and mediators, which were introduced in the 1920s and 30s when television started coming about, there was no such thing. This term media existed long before television was in place. So unfortunately, it's even though I'm aware that Wikipedia is where most people are claiming this, we all know Wikipedia is not entirely accurate, and So unfortunately, it's not true. You know, the medias do control and manipulate people. They don't. Well, excuse me. Let me take that back. They don't control. They influence, and that's a big key to remember and understand, because it's not so much about control. It's as we talked about in the lecture today, that it's a tacit agreement that the presenter and the audience have. You know, when people get involved with watching television or listening to music or being a byproduct of any type of media, or basically allowing themselves or subjugating themselves to the media, then it is a voluntary action, even if you're not aware of it. But the mere fact that you tune in and stay tuned in and watch the TVs or listen to that music, you are basically consenting to whatever it is that's being imposed upon you. And as a byproduct of that, it does influence you to a certain degree, and it does really shape who you are and who you think you are, who you think your person is via the mental faculty. So it's not a question of if they do, they definitely do. The question is to what extent do they influence you as a person, and of course then culture, because cultures are made of many people, and so if it influences one person, naturally it would influence cultures entirely.
So I mean, with what you just said, magic's very powerful, but it also, from what you just described, seems dark. Is that why people are afraid of it? Is magic dark?
It's a tool, and I've reiterated that many times, because it's like a hand. You know, you have two hands. You can make love to somebody with a hand, or you can kill them. So does that make the hand evil, or is it the intention, essentially, of the individual, and also the ultimate action? Because we have intention, and then we also have the action thereof. And the action thereof that is the consequence of those particular intentions also can be bifurcated and say, okay, well, was that a good action or was that a bad action? And of course that's relative to who you're asking the question. But magic, it's not a question of good or bad. That's not, I don't think that's a good way of looking at it, because it's more about empowering the individual to the natural energies, the natural abilities that they have within themselves. Magic shouldn't even be looked at as a foreign thing, because we all have it already. The difference between a magician, if you want to call it in that respect, is the fact that the magician has the ability to control what we already have, because we all have a heartbeat. You know, we all have a pineal gland. This isn't. You know, we all have these energies already within us. The only difference is that when one becomes aware of it through certain meditative practices, they have the ability to control it. Now, does that make them evil because they possess this? You know, they say money is the root of all evil. Is a millionaire necessarily evil? Not necessarily. Is a billionaire necessarily evil? Not necessarily. You see, it comes all back to intention, and then of course what you do with it, because if he or she is philanthropic from their nature, then, you know, either they can fund wars or they can fund helping people. But when they fund helping people, then the question is, well, are they just maintaining themselves in a bad position, which, because they're not self-sufficient? You see, it goes down this very slippery slope. Where does it really end? When does it become good? When does it become bad? But irrespective of that, I don't think one should subside practice just because of potential evils that can arise out of it. Because in that sense, well, let's just stay home. Let's not drive cars because we can get in an accident. Let's not make technology because it can become an enslaved tool. You know, let's not make radio because we can influence people in a negative light. And then the question comes down to, well, should we just stop progress in the name of potentially exploiting evil? You know, men have been known to do evil since the beginning of time. So,
Well, the evil in itself is subjective, isn't it?
Exactly.
So let me ask you this. Let's dissect magic a little bit more then. So when you're talking magic, and what you're talking about when you speak of the pineal gland, and you talk about yoga and meditation and whatever way you get where you're going with it, what have you looked into? What kind of force magic, in quotations, could theoretically be? Because there's like a gravitational force, there's a magnetic force.
Right.
So what kind of force could,
Well, there's variegated forces, and that comes to the Kundalini chakra system that we were talking about earlier in the presentation. When the idea is that basically you have the spinal cord, which actually has the Kundalini latently presented within the actual spinal cord itself, and then you have certain energies which are considered the male energies, and these are the pranas, which are dispersed variously throughout the body. Pranayama, which is the retention or the holding of the pranic force via breathing exercises, is where one actually consciously takes these energies via breathing exercises and concentrates them on certain quote-unquote chakra points, which are latent energies within the spinal column themselves. When you concentrate to a certain extent, and we talked about this particularly in the beginning of the lecture, then you start, the light of that concentration starts bombarding and creates a certain activity within that system itself, because it's basically the two energies, or one energy giving life to the other energy, and there's a byproduct of that. So in essence, in creating different energy forces, it depends on how much and on what chakra one meditates on would bestow boons or gifts or whatever you want to call them to the practitioner. So the idea is that meditating on the Muladhara chakra, which is the base chakra, it gives one the power to be able to levitate, also to be able to bring objects back to existence, not existence, but deceased objects, dead people, dead beings. It has the ability, because that's where the life force allegedly stems from. Which, we have Jesus bringing people back from the dead, so it's not totally out of the question, particularly for Christians. It shouldn't be. And then when you meditate on the next, the chakra, which is the water element, right above that in the bladder region, or the bladder plexus, then one has the ability to float on water for as long as they want. They could also go underwater, under earth, for as long as they want. And supposedly, allegedly, there were many scientific demonstrations, like with Swami Rama, where they would show that these people can go underwater, totally buried, for 6 months, come out, and they're alive, because they know how to turn off this life force within them. Then as we go up, then we got certain treasures where people can, if you go to the Manipura chakra, which is the third chakra, one has the ability to see things. They can find anything you bury anywhere, they could instantly see it. It's like clairvoyance, essentially, is the byproduct of that. And then you have the Anahata chakra, which is the middle. This is, this is the heart chakra, as they call it. And many gifts come from this one. When one realizes that particular chakra, then they say you get cosmic love from all sides. You never have any enemies. There's no nemesis from your side. Animals will never attack you. This kind of stuff. You literally get cosmic love, in the sense that nothing nefarious will happen to you, not just from human beings, but cosmic, as in all organics, animate or inanimate. And then you have the throat chakra, which will give you the ability to have seership, like Edgar Cayce. You can tap into the Akashic records. You can see everything from the beginning of time to the end of time, everybody's Akashic records. You can hear things from any part of the world, literally hear them, as if you were standing next to the person. And that's the throat chakra, which is the thorax plexus. And then, of course, you have the pineal gland, which is the sixth chakra, and this is what the people call the third eye. And when you tap and break this one open, then the result of it, like we talked about, because all the chakras are really within that pineal gland anyways, it's a type of descending order. You get all the boons. They call them the 36, they call it the 32. Siddha. Siddha is a Sanskrit word which means psychic abilities or psychic powers. And everything that we mentioned, even other boons, like being able to literally fly in the air, not just levitate from the ground like the Muladhara chakra, but literally be able to actually fly through the air, and very psychic powers. So to answer the question, it depends what you're meditating on, what your objective is, the intensity of the practice, but those would be it in a recap.
I like that. You want to take us to a break, because I want to get into some deeper questions when we're done.
Exactly, I was having that same thought. So let's take a break, and we'll come back in just a minute with more of our chat with Josef Dolezal and Raw Magic. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Kamori.
And I am Jacob, co-hosting.
Right on, and we are continuing our discussion with Josef Dolezal today. We had just finished an event called Raw Magic, and he is expounding on what Raw Magic is all about. And I know you had another question you wanted to ask him, Jacob.
Yeah, I want to kind of get into the philosophy of the thought of spirituality and dealing with magic. And if I can even explain this, or if I'm just going to ruin this whole sound clip right now. But what I'm trying to get at is, like, from what it sounds to with spirituality or chasing this ability that we could have here, is it feels like, we're born and bred to have life. And in essence, like what was said, was everybody has all this potential to have magic and be able to use magic. But it seems like it's a more spiritual aspect. For example, like if you die, I think a lot of us believe something happens after we die. And that something that happens after we die sounds to me like what you're describing more is like, what you're actually trying to achieve. Like, so for example, everything you're trying to achieve right now, like, to harness all those chakras and come in touch with yourself, I feel like in death that all of that stuff kind of actually just happens. So theoretically, do you think it's something we should be trying to achieve? Or should we just be trying to live life without trying to touch spirituality? The reason I'm kind of bringing it up and the question's not clear is because
Question's very clear. I know
yeah,
exactly.
because if you're looking at culture and society today, we're getting away from spirituality and it's more science, even though people forget that the first science there ever was a religious spiritual
All of
science.
it was.
Exactly.
Alchemy, what became chemistry and biology, was really alchemy in the medieval sense that it was truly a magical effort, and then physics, of course, stemmed from Isaac Newton with mathematics, which was 100% Kabbalistic.
Exactly.
Right.
So are we trying to achieve this magic or trying to achieve this attunement with ourselves to maybe create an infinity or an everlasting life, to live a long life? So, maybe the purpose is to live here forever, because if you utilize this magic, if you harness your full potential that you are as a being, maybe you'd exist forever, and maybe that might be the goal. Because even if you look at old texts, people, it seems, used to live longer, or so they say.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Some of those, in Genesis, you have people living 500, 800 years, and Nephilim living thousands of years, and I think it was absolutely a possibility. But this comes to the million-dollar question of preferentialism. What do you want out of life? Because, see, most people, even though it might sound, this whole concept of magic or realizing psychic abilities, it sounds very fantastical. It sounds like something that would appeal to most people. But now comes the sacrifice part. It's like, there's nobody in the world that if you said, I'm going to make you a multi-billionaire, do you want it? They're going to say, no, I don't want it. Most people are going to say yes. And the reason most people won't achieve it because they don't want to sacrifice and work for it. And that's the same thing with psychic powers. I personally think that from a theoretical perspective, realizing these potentials within people would make a much more qualitative existence. However, with that said, I'm always on the fence, and I still haven't decided, and it's not so much my decide, I'm going to go into that a little bit later, but I think for most people, it might not be the best idea because I don't think they realize why they want to do it. For me, the reason I got involved in it and still continue involved in it is because to me, if one has these abilities, it's a clear indicator that you understand the fundamental workings of the universe. That's why, and that's always been my MO, that's why I got into physics. And I realized either physics doesn't know it or they won't tell you, because once you get to certain echelons, they're like, yeah, we know it, but no, we're not going to tell you, unless you work for NASA and you live underground your whole life. But you're right, in a certain respect, and it goes back to exactly how I started off the question, to realize these potentials, you do need to sacrifice yourself, specifically the personality. And this is a key thing to understand, that your personality is your mind. It's who you think you are, but you're not really that person. There's the influences, the byproduct of the influences of your environment, of your past lives. And that personality is, in point of fact, what is being eradicated and thinned out in the spiritual meditations to realize or to sense out what you already have in yourself. So it's actually like a tit for tat. We have a lot of personality, we have low spiritualism. The less personality we have, the higher our spiritual understanding is going to come. And that's kind of exactly what it is. It's like a teeter-totter. And so, to answer your question, yeah, to develop these psychic powers is actually, in some respect, like dying, like physically dying, even though you're still alive. But to the world, you're dead. And they say this in the scriptures. When you're truly spiritually enlightened, you are dead to the world. Like, you'll look like you're alive, but you're dead to the world. You don't really react to the world that much because your inner lights become self-sufficient. And so it is exactly what I said in the beginning. It's a preference. What do you want out of life? Do you want to be a millionaire? Do you want to just be a playboy and not really care about spirituality? Do you want to be a bookworm? Do you want to be a famous star? What do you want out of life? And I think that's a preferential question, because maybe some people, they don't care about this stuff, even though I would argue that it's a much more qualitative existence. But there's a lot of people, and they believe in their heart, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't think it's evil. I just, like you said, I just want to live life. I want to find a wife, have 2 children, have 1 dog, a picket white fence, and when it's my time to go, I'm ready to go. And that's their choice, and that's okay, because everybody has their own paths and their own truth. Like I always say, and I'll say it again, the truth is found in life's journey. That's where it's at. To me, it's just a healthy alternative, because I think, especially in the times that we're living in, we feel so deprived and weak because of the fact that, the pop culture really targets our senses and makes us desensitized and demoralized, that I think it's a healthy dose of like, hey, don't forget who you are. You can go, like they say, hell's not a dangerous place for those who know how to get out. That's a saying. And that's kind of like, go to hell. You can go to hell, play around, which is the everyday world of, losing yourself, working 60 hours a week, being totally inundated with entertainment, because that's hell. That's what it is. Hell is basically passion on fire. And those, when you saturate those passions, you look at what that word means, you're constantly, we are in hell right now. You know, a lot of us, it's a conscious state. And that's, I think most people are in the conscious state of hell currently. So what I like to offer with this stuff is just like, don't forget that you have tremendous potentials. Now, whether you ever go down that route, preferential again. Are you going to do it or are you not going to do it? I'm just saying the tools are there. Things aren't hopeless. But if you want to live in a certain environment, that's a choice that you can make too.
And that's what it sounds like. We're doing choices here. But my thing is too, I guess we could just play devil's advocate, because I mean, for you personally, it's clear that you'd rather know than not know.
Absolutely.
But I mean, you know, we all come into this world not knowing, you know, and whether it's like a downloaded program into your brain that you purposely come to this life so you don't know, either to rediscover, or if you can get a new perspective on life, or if by not knowing you get to actually enjoy life. Because a lot of things that you've noticed in the world, stupidity is bliss. Those people that aren't aware, you know what I mean? Those people that aren't aware, that just don't know that there's a problem, or that don't know what's going on, they seem to have happier lives. They seem to just be able to move with ease in life, where it's like as you chase the information, as you try to understand the perspective, it builds frustration because there's so much to understand and so much to realize. So what if, in essence, you're messing life up? I'm just playing devil's advocate here. You're going against your program. You're going against what you downloaded into your mind so you could have a free, relaxed life. And instead, you're cracking that program and you're fighting it with everything you got. So you just realize something that you didn't want to come into this life knowing. Because in essence, if let's say you die and you get all that back, why are you fighting so hard to have it here right now when it's all going to exist the minute you cease?
No, I know exactly what you're saying. What's the point of working so hard for it now when this life is they're supposed to do certain things within this life, and then you're going to have that anyways in the next life?
Yeah.
To me, it's not so much that, because I think, again, that comes to a preferential question. Ignorance is bliss is a true statement some of the time, because there are some people, because you don't know, that you actually are happier because you're not aware of the way things are. But see, I would say it's a two-sided story. One is when you're a kid and you're happy, and this whole ignorance is bliss philosophy is applicable. That's true to a certain extent. Then you grow up and you find out responsibilities, and then you become unhappy because your circumstance is always one of some kind of slavery, or you're always responsible. You don't want to do stuff. You have to work, whatever it may be. And I think what it is that the person have to be able, because that's what intelligence is, like water flowing into the grooves and figuring out how the grooves fill in, and basically figuring out the operations of things can become much easier. And what I mean by that, like when let's say you're a child, you have your parents, things are easy because things are taken care of for you. You want something, you cry, you scream, you generally get it. When you get older, the parents aren't there anymore. Now you have a society to deal with and not parents. But you can still figure things out. Some people do it through deceit. Some people work really hard. They have good careers. And so they have to sacrifice again. I think it's the same thing. You just have to work harder to realize that. Because, and that's exactly why I took this path again, is because when you realize not only how things work socially but psychologically, and you expand on the concept of understanding the fundamental structures of the universe, that's a good position to be in. Because would you rather have $1 million, or would you rather know how things in the universe operate? And let's just say, hypothetically, you had such wisdom that you could manifest things by mere thought and mere will. Just imagine it. I'm not saying it's true, I'm not saying it's false, but would you rather have the money, which you have to work for too, or would you rather work towards a different channel and have these powers and these wisdoms? Now, why I'm saying that is because everything is really perception. When we come to the mind, there is unfortunately no truth when it comes to the mind, because everything in the mind is perception, but there is something behind the mind, behind perception, where there's a fixity to things. And I think that's what true spirituality is, because remember, spirituality, concentration, yoga if you want to call it, yoga meaning union in Sanskrit, is the unionizing of your consciousness with the absolute. And you do that by thinning out the mind. So this whole, all the ideologies, the isms, the prejudice, the I think, I like, I dislike, I don't like, that is to be eliminated in true spirituality. Not like a lot of these love and lighters, everything's beautiful, let's put oils on each other and burn incense. It's okay, it's an aspect of. I'm not saying it doesn't serve its purpose. But the higher rungs of spirituality, true asceticism, is to really eliminate that mind faculty Because the truth is not in the mind. The mind, you know, people think that the mind is the highest truth. It comes with this whole Western business of, you know, Westernism and intellectuality and spirituality was a byproduct of the Enlightenment, and people think that the intellect is the highest intelligence that there is, and it isn't. And I think that's what people they struggle with, because they'll say, I'm so smart, I'm so intelligent, I'm so much smarter than everybody, why am I unhappy, why don't I have this, why don't I have that? And the thing is, because that's not the ultimate truth of things. You know, there are intelligence and there are laws that supersede even intellectualism. And I've said this before in one of my speeches. I said that spiritual law supersedes natural law. People, when they think mentally, they're still in natural. There's positive law and there's natural law. Positive law is all man-made stuff. This is the ethics. These are the laws, you know, of like the court systems. These are your morals. These are things that men have made up that have generally decided are accurate or in tune so that social harmony may be generally progressive. Then there's natural law, the way the universe actually works. And these are your true orthodox religions, and this is also how like the body works and this kind of stuff. So natural law always supersedes positive law, and it's an important thing to remember, because if you're stuck in the mind, if you're truly stuck in the mind and you're saying, oh, this is the way things are, I don't think you ever can progress, because you've already decided what you believe is right. And if you're there, there's nothing that can help you, because you're going to say there's a wall there, there's a color blue there, and you will not even choose to see beyond that, because you're stuck in the mind. Now, to me, that's why I think, you know, there's something to be said about this whole concept of surrendering to God. And this goes into a totally much bigger discussion. First of all, what is God? What do you mean surrender? Should I just lay on the ground and, you know, let the sun burn me? No. But it's about trying to feel something within yourself, some kind of energy, and give it to a higher source and allow it as much as possible, within reasonable means, to sublimate into the bigger whole. Because again, spirituality is basically unity. We're trying to break the individual down, and trying to sublimate it into a bigger whole so you can move back into that whole so you can be part of the whole. And that's actually what magic is, because then you can control objects around you when you become it. But for now, because we're so gung-ho on being individual objects, this is mine and I'm here, you know? How can you communicate? Because you've already decided this is where your limits end. See what I'm saying? And so you have to eliminate, via the mental process, the meditation, it's a thinning out, a slow process. You don't want to go quick because you'll go crazy. That's why a lot of people, they go, because it maybe happens too quick, you know? So, you know, to answer that question, I think, again, we have to get out of the realm of relatives. That's extremely important. And you know, when we're in the mind, all we're doing is intellectually arguing preferentialism and ideologies, and we know that's relative.
So how does the heart play into this?
Well, the heart plays into it that the mind is actually rooted in the heart, and this is a scripture from the Upanishads and also in the Kundalini yogic systems. They say, this comes specifically out of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. They say that the senses, you basically have the senses, they're rooted in the mind, and then the mind figures out how to satisfy the senses. You know, it wants to touch, it wants to taste, feel, see, and smell. These are the senses. The mind is the CPU, if you will, that will figure out how to get what it wants so that the body's satisfied. But ultimately, all desires reside in the heart. So even though people think the mind is the highest authority, it goes back to the heart. There's something beyond the heart as well, too. But this goes into the light of the heart, they call it. It's like the hope of the heart. But it's basically the desires within the heart that want something. Because when you think about it, a lot of people aren't key to this, because when you go through a process in life, let's say you want a boyfriend or you want a nice car or anything, then many people aren't keen to detecting where that impulse comes from. We feel it ultimately in the urges. You know, you're hungry, I want to eat, it's in my stomach. But see, there was a process that this whole thing happened, kind of, you know, like where your stomach wanted something to eat, your mind said, okay, but what's good? What do I like? What don't I like? And then there's ultimately a desire that was there connected with that, and it's the desire that gave it life, that is basically the desire that allowed the mental faculty to figure out how to satisfy the senses, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but we can pick up on that on break time, because I know we're coming to a break.
You're good. Yes, we are. We're going to be back in just a minute with more of the Broad Perspective and our visit with Josef Dolezal. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Kamori.
I'm Jacob.
And we're continuing our visit with Josef Dolezal and talking about the conference or the event he just did on raw magic. He's been answering some of the questions we had, but we before we took this last break, he was talking about the heart and its connection to the brain and how all this functions. And I want you to go ahead and finish up because I know we kind of stopped
Right.
before we were done.
So essentially, to recap on that, we were talking about how the senses are subject to the senses are subject to the mind, and the mind is actually subject to the heart, because it's the desires that come from the heart that ultimately give the impetus for the mind to figure out how it wants to achieve, so it can feel satiated. And a practical example of that, we can see a lot of times we do so many things in our life that we know are bad, but the heart wants it, so we'll do things that are destructive to ourselves, to our relationships with people, because our heart is misplaced. We know there's something like our mind will be, okay, I know that I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to do it anyways, whether it's being abusive to yourself, to other people, whatever it is, just this destructive mentality. Well, that right there shows conclusively that the mind isn't the highest authority, because we think, again, as a byproduct of this Renaissance intellectualism that Westerners had in the 1500s moving forward, and especially being ossified by the scientific movement, that the mind is everything, the mind will figure out the secrets of the universe. But we see conclusively that the mind is actually not the highest authority. Why? Because the heart will always get to say, if you want something, if there's an extreme desire, a lot of times your mind can't even figure out how to achieve stuff, but you'll find yourself in the right place at the right time, and the mind had nothing to do with it. And my brother has a lot of examples of that, where he would meet certain people he wanted to meet, puts the intention out there because the heart, the desire's there, and then lo and behold, a week, a day, a month later, he'll just happen arbitrarily, things the mind couldn't possibly have figured out. And that also reminds me of an interesting story, that in Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, there was a quote in there that basically says that any crown that's gone against the tiara has always been crushed or shattered, which is essentially representing the male and feminine energies, the crown being the male, and the tiara representing the feminine, because the church, which is the tiara, the triple tiara representing Roman Catholicism, it was always a feminine symbol. The church is a feminine symbol, basically, and so it's interesting to also note that, in allegory, these kind of things have been shown here and there that show that it's the heart, the desire, that actually has more authority and more intelligence in that respect than the mind does. They all work in unison, but the ultimate source and authority is you got to get right with your heart in order to be able to determine what you really want. Because if you're honest, using the mind and via introspection, and you're honest with yourself, with your heart, with your desire, what are you doing? But getting right with yourself in here. I'm not talking about mentally. I'm talking getting right with yourself in here. Then things become very clear. And with that respect, I'm not exactly sure why we started talking about that, but that finishes that.
That's good.
Concept of it.
So here's the question that I have, and I think that perhaps there will be a listener or two out here that might resonate with this.
Or three.
Or 3 or 4. Now, what was really popular in the last, 5, 6, 7 years is The Secret.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about how to get your desires, how to get all these things that you
Sure.
want. And to a certain degree, I can see where someone might think that magic is really is for that same end.
An elaboration thereof.
An
sure.
elaboration thereof. I mean, I personally don't think so. However, I know that there are going to be people that are saying, oh, that's just another take on the same type of principle, how I can get that new red sports car, and how I can get those material things.
Right.
And to a certain degree, I get it. I understand why that thought process exists. But I would like for you to differentiate between those two, because I know it's going to come up, because that was really a buzz for a long time.
Sure. Yeah, and there's the only misconception about that is that people think just because you think or feel something that it's going to happen to you. Unfortunately, that's not the case, because as a physical being, we still have to move within the physical reality, meaning that you still have to do stuff. Unfortunately, you have to go out and meet people, network. You do have to work hard. And I do believe I said this on the last show that we had, and I said basically the secret to success is simple. You take a pen and paper down and write this one. You figure out what you love to do, and you work your ass off. And I really mean you work your ass off. I mean, you give it your all. You put in 16-hour days. You network with people. You refine yourself, refine your strategy, figure out who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and you'll get it. And I think maybe where this whole The Secret, it was, of course, and The Secret wasn't, we call it New Age, but really it's, as in knocking it, as they say, seek and you shall find. That was really the whole premise of that, The Secret. It was biblical allegories that somebody took, they figured it out and like, hey, we could repackage this because people aren't into Christianity anymore. We could repackage it and look, we can sell it to people and they'll believe it because there is truth to it. I'm not saying there's a truth to it.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that nonetheless, you still have to do something. My big MO in life was finding out magic. That doesn't mean I just sat in a room and I was like, well, that'd be really cool to figure this stuff out. I went to libraries, I found books that led me in the right direction. I met people that would otherwise have not led me in the right direction. And it's all these small stepping stones that'll get you to a point where you realize that was once an ideal, you actually realize that in a day-to-day existence. And that's really, to sum up the whole magic thing, is there relevant? Sure. You can't just think it, you have to feel it. You know what I mean? Because when you feel it, then you start bringing to it. Because when you feel it, you resonate. The frequencies start changing, and you start attracting people and that kind of stuff. That's true, but that doesn't mean you can stay at home. You know, you still got to go out. You still have to work hard. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that's where at least I was never big. I know of The Secret, but I was never big into it. I didn't buy the books. I didn't listen to the videos. But I noticed a lot of people that do the whole dream board stuff. You know, they're what's a good euphemism? They're not traditionally participatory in working hard. You know, they put up their dream board. They're like, oh, it'd be cool to have that boyfriend or that car and this kind of stuff, but they stay home most of the time. You know, or they're very just indifferent about their work attitude. And, unfortunately, because we are physical and you can believe as spiritual as you are, you have to incorporate that feeling of this is what I want. You have to have a vision for your future. I'm not saying no, but I'm saying you still got to work,
I've heard treat and use your feet.
Right. So that's the secret. Figure out what you love to do, and then work your ass off. But you still have to feel it. Absolutely.
So the same holds true for magic, then.
Absolutely, because it's just anything. Some people want exotic women. Some people want a lot of money. Some people want to look ripped, and I want magic.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, but when you say magic, when we say magic, it kind of makes it like its own little section. Mm-hmm. Would you rather not section, like its own little sect? Like, is magic something separate like that?
No.
Or
no.
Is it just your way of using a term that somebody can comprehend as to like the actual human potential?
Exactly. It's not an ism, and that's a very important thing to understand, because when I say magic, it's not a religion, and religion even is rooted in truth. It's unfortunate that the ideologies of religion become dogmatic, and this is where you get the isms, and this is where all the teachings ultimately start falling apart. Because to me, magic is how does one become in conscious communion with the natural laws of the universe. The Secret is one of them, but it's a very small part of them, but it is one of them. So it's not about ideologies, it's not about followers or leaders, it's about saying, hey, these things exist within you, this is how you can do it. Why do you want to know how to do it? Because life becomes better. We all want a better life. We all want more money, not because we're necessarily materialistic, but because somehow subconsciously we've associated more money with a better qualitative life.
A comfort, sure.
Exactly, and to me that's what magic represents, finding out the fundamental functionalities, if you will, the structure of the universe, and therefore being able to, by mere will, being able to manipulate and control that. It's not.
So in essence, that's what religions theoretically
These
were
used
about.
to be, absolutely, and you see that in the scriptures all the time. Moses carrying the caduceus, that is a dead sign of magic, because the snake wraps around that. The snake is the snake of Kundalini, and the Muladhara chakra. You have the triangle, and the snake is wrapped around, facing down 3.5 times, and then when you raise it up, it goes up 3.5 times. Look at any time you see Moses holding that cross represents the spinal cord, and this is a fact, and the snake wrapped around it 3.5 times. You will always see that. The snake represents the Kundalini force that I talked about, which is basically the chakras, and then the spine represents the pranic spinal cord is what it represents.
So then
parting the Red Sea.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing about it is that I'm getting here, and it kind of goes back to the other questions, is it sounds like magic or this force or this human potential is a lot of power. In essence, like a whole nother level of power.
Sure.
And when we're talking billions of people being able to achieve that power,
right?
Isn't that a scary thing? Because if you're achieving these powers, does an inherent thing happen where you're going to not be like malevolent, like your intentions won't be malevolent?
I think that's what most people would think. And
but what if that's not true? What if the reason all these religions...
Let me tell you why. Because in order to achieve this stuff, you would have to have a very affluent understanding of conscious unity. Meaning that the idea of ego, self-satisfaction, would have to inherently be almost nullified within the personality. Because remember, what we're doing with these practices, we are eliminating personality, that thing which is responsible for greed, covetedness, deception, all that stuff that we consider quote unquote evil. And to be able to achieve these things, you really do have to eliminate that personality which is responsible for those faculties, and the consciousness does have to become more unitarian, not only in individual harmony society, but in the way natural law is. In other words, what I'm saying is if you were like that, which I think most people, that would be their first argument, I don't think you would be able to achieve these certain things. I really don't.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, I get that, but at the heart of things, the thing is, that mental power, or that power is a tool, or is your actual being manifesting itself on this planet. So your potential would be manifesting itself in energy that you can manipulate.
Right.
But would that necessarily happen if everybody's doing it? Because everybody alive is on a different evolutionary scale.
Absolutely.
So the thing is, it's like if everybody could achieve that, and they did achieve that, would you have a world of 6.5 billion Supermen, and you have the bad Supermen and the good Supermen, like alternate universes, so they'd all fight each other? Because what if all these religions were doing an actual good thing, playing devil's advocate?
I thought many times, yeah.
Suppressing the power, because imagine, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Right.
So, there's something to that. So it's like, if everybody got all of this, and if everybody used it, I can't believe that everybody would do something right, because you think the theory behind politics, when it originated, was to do good. You served your country, or you served your society, or the little city you're in, and you worked with the community, and then because of all that knowledge, as you were an elder, you got into politics to make the right decisions. But look where we're at today. That's not it. It turned, that power of politics. You found the easy route to politics. Politics were an experience growing to make right decisions. And people totally skipped that, did a detour, and now it's just politics. So it's like a whole family business now, and hence why we're having it.
Dynasties, essentially.
Yeah. So what if somebody figured out the shortcuts to this, which would happen? Somebody would write the little shortcuts. The idiot's guide, the dummy's guide to magic.
To achieving magic. How do you like that? Maybe I'll be the author of that.
Yeah. Our human potential, and bam, you have more chaos than anything. You could probably rip the fabric of existence, because in essence, what we as a being are manifesting reality, creating the reality we're here, because as beings, the gift we have, and the reason we want to be like God is because we have the ability to create. To create
the
life.
Ability to create is godlike, absolutely.
Exactly. So imagine if you rip that shroud, we like totally ripped out the thought of physical existence here on this planet, and just became those powerful beings of that energy, that potential that you are. You wouldn't need that human experience, and you're just here, and all of a sudden it mixes, because not everything would leave you. Still that human side, which in essence is that side that pushes desire, because desire, again, what you were saying, desire is what manifests you wanting to do the bad things or wanting to do the good things.
Right. Desire is inherently, they say, desire is what is evil inherently. That's what is evil, if you look at it from scriptural.
So what if you're doing the wrong thing here? What if you're? What if you should be living life? What if you should be living life, but you didn't put that whole delete code in your brain when you were born that said delete magic, delete human potential.
I was supposed to, but I didn't.
But somehow that whole binary code didn't download all the way, and now you're trying to be that being that you are forever, and you're trying to manifest it here, and in essence you're losing
the human experience.
Sure, exactly.
No, I can see that. Well, and that comes to a multifaceted answer. First of all, what does one want? What does one want from the human experience? Do you want the human experience, or do you want something more? And also, I know we're running out of time here, so I'm going to kind of cheat here and sum this up. If it was so evil and the absolute didn't want it, it couldn't be a potential reality. And if it's a potential reality, I think that it does play a necessary role in being part of the conscious evolutionary process of the human race, which I think we're going through right now.
Cool. With that, can we take a break and come back to hold that question? We'll be back in just a moment with more of the Broad Perspective and our visit with Josef Dolezal and Raw Magic. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Kamori.
And I'm Jacob.
And we're continuing our visit with Josef Dolezal. And before we took our break, we were talking, you had a multifaceted answer.
Multifaceted, I say.
Yeah, about human existence etc. This is our last segment, so why don't you tell us what you need to tell us on that, please.
So just to recap, the question was essentially, would it be the right thing to do if one could exploit, for lack of a better term, these psychic abilities that we all have? I mean, is it part of the program, the human evolutionary program, or would it be something that we shouldn't get involved in because it would kind of, I don't know, cheat the system or the human evolutionary process? And, you know, I've thought about that myself many times, because the question comes, if the absolute God, whoever you want to call it, didn't allow these potentials, why would it even be a potential within one's body? You know, and I understand this can come to an argument of temptations, and, you know, the good Lord is testing you to see if that you're an evil spirit or a good spirit, but it all has to do with intentions, again, and what you do with that. Because, you know, if we talk about psychic abilities being evil, then we have to inherently say that Jesus Christ was evil. He did bring people back from the dead. He did levitate and walk on water. He did turn water into wine. You know, and he brought himself back from death. You know, and these are all the things that now a lot of religious dogmatism will say this is a big no-no. But wait a second, your guy kind of did the same thing.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, I don't really care personally to go off on these tangents. It's just good to see how many of these things kind of contradict themselves in that respect. But to me, I don't care, because I think, again, and this is my stance on it, it makes life that much more qualitative. And also, and I think this is a very key, important factor to keep in mind, you really can't learn this stuff unless you totally change your perception and your understanding of the way things are, sublimate into a more harmonious way. And I don't mean that like these new love and lighters, you know, it's all hugs and stuff. That's not what I mean.
Wait, though. But when you say learn, clarify what you mean learn. Like learn as in actually be able to practice.
Consciously attuned.
But in the essence where you're just learning what it is, like the definition, or actually learn to put into practice?
Learn is this. I'm talking about learn this, consciously attuned, because you can mentally know something, but you're not wise, and we talked about that once. And true wisdom is to understand those power faculties, and the wisdom comes from the heart, not from the mind. Intellectualism comes from the mind, and that's just temporal knowledge. It's like memorizing dates and facts. And
so where does magic come from?
Magic comes from the heart, ultimately. Absolutely, because it's about understanding desire and creation and everything. Everybody knows that you know, to create you have to have a passion for it. You say that. Have you ever seen a passionless creation? It doesn't even exist. God himself, God created, which means what? And if you ever read scriptural commentary, any scriptural commentary, they'll say God created because he had an urge. Urges come from here. And if you read scriptural commentary, biblical, or, you know, if you read any kind of Judea commentary on it, when they try to explain what does that mean, that in the beginning there was a hole, and then you had a hole, basically a circular, and there was something that came in between here that made the one into the two.
But urge seems so negative, so human.
It is. And that's exactly what it is, because if you know urge, what does urge do? It splits, and it splits this way, which is a minus sign, right? So it is inherently negative. But in order for us to consciously come back to unity, we have to, and this is the biblical scriptural say this, you have to be like the Elohim or the gods, and you have to know good and evil, because God is everything. It's not just the good. Big mistake. You know, God is not good. If it is, then, you know, why does God give one person?
So this is an interesting thing. So maybe, like, let's say this New Age movement, blah blah blah. I don't like that word. I don't even like to be associated with it. But here's what I'm trying to get at. Maybe this whole thing, like this magic, the word magic that you're using and everything you're doing, are you in essence then, since you're not creating anything, because it's already there, basically that's what you're saying.
You're becoming aware
you're
of the
rediscovering it.
Right,
so in essence, what's happening here is you're reawakening.
Yeah, you're becoming aware of what you already have, and that's what I said even on the lecture today, if you guys remember, and like when I was showing you some of that stuff with my hand where I have the ability to consciously transfer this stuff, it was always there. You just become aware of it.
So then, again, everybody's being misled by all these movements that are, in essence, regurgitating the same thing. You're not becoming awake. You're awake already.
You're awake already. And you don't become awake because, I mean, what does that exactly mean? Just because you're aware of the fact that some group called the Bilderbergs exists doesn't mean you're awake. You're actually more asleep. You know, most of those people, they go into their dark little corners where the whole world's caving in on them now. And I don't know if that's necessarily enlightened or awake. You can believe it is because you think you're intellectually smart, which a lot of these people think they are. But look at their lives. You know, don't even argue with them. Just go look at their lives, and they'll tell you exactly what's going on.
Exactly, they're falling more asleep because again they're worrying about the rest of the world.
And they created an absolute, like we were talking about before. They see the truth. It's not the truth, but they see the truth, you know, and they're not willing to even go outside their little paradigm that they've created to be absolute, which of course it isn't.
So in essence, what the magic does, and I'm going to cover this term in a second because I don't like that term either, but what this is actually doing is it's helping you concentrate on yourself instead of wasting your time on the whole group on things.
Know thyself.
Because I mean, this whole time everybody worries about how the world's influencing them and what they're doing, and that shouldn't be worried about.
That's because they're slave mentalities, and slaves are always worried how their masters are going to treat them.
Exactly. Right. Where in essence you should. No, yeah. I mean,
I'm not a slave, so that's why I don't know that. I understand we all have responsibilities. Like I have to make money like everybody else, but you don't have to. You know, it's just like that's a conscious decision based out of fear, and fears are. That's why people are slaves. It's not so much. It's not a fiduciary thing. Slavery is a mental mindset. That's what it is. Freedom is a mindset. Slavery is a mindset. So if you're and you always hear this thing, people never catch that stuff. The Bilderbergs and the Illuminati are controlling us. No, they're controlling you. Not me. I'm cool. I don't watch TV. I don't let people determine how I'm going to dress or act or thing. And I'm not going to look at a girl or a guy this way because the TV told me so. Let's back that up. They control you, not me. I'm cool.
And the fact that you even said that shows that you're under the control. Well, not you. I'm saying the person that's saying.
Well, exactly. That's the point. That's the point I was trying to make. The fact that they say they're controlling us, basically they're saying, yeah, I'm being controlled, and they're angry about it, and they're fearful. It's like an animal when they're getting
but they're reacting, but they're not even realizing that
their reaction is what's actually enslaving them. And that's exactly what I was saying at the lecture. It's not, nobody can enslave you. That's a misconcept. Nobody can enslave anybody in this world. Your ignorance, your fear is what enslaves you. You see? It's not, nobody does that for you, because if you don't know any better, if you don't know how to feed yourself or build your own house or be spiritually self-sufficient, you got to depend on somebody else, right? And that's why people find themselves in abusive relationships, whether it's a guy or a girl or government and subject.
And okay, good point. Now I just want to get this because we have a few more minutes. Is magic the term that they use for all these abilities that you're talking about, these re-enhancing abilities?
Unfortunately, most people in the Western world know magic to be Houdinism, which is sleight hand stuff. So I know it is the orthodox term, but most people don't see it like that. Magic is magi. Magi are basically practicers of the arts, of clairvoyance, geomancy, astrology, even tarot card reading, but also it gets more back into being able to control that magnetism, if you want to call it, in the life force. So even though it is an appropriate term, I think most people, it's a misnomer for most people. It may be developing psychic abilities and also self-realization would be a more appropriate term. But in the context that I'm using it, in the orthodox context, magic is psychic powers. That's what it is.
And is there a book or anything you're considering writing or anything?
Not considering. I am going to write. It's called Raw Magic, and hopefully it'll be out by the end of this year.
So it's going to cover all these topics?
It'll cover the rudimentary basis. It'll be more of a gear towards the layman without going into exhaustive details and history that I find unnecessary to the practice as such.
Vivian, what do you think about all this?
I love it. I think that we have the ability at this point to redefine an old paradigm and give it a whole new meaning, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited about working with Joe and seeing what we can do. So I really am grateful that you spent the time with us today here on The Broad Perspective and provided some more enlightenment for our listeners. And if they have any other questions, they can contact you at thepyramidcenter.org.
That's a C, not an S.
Yeah, right. thepyramidcenter.org.
Or was that an S or not a C? No. Thepyramidcenter.org. Pretty much just like how you know it, that's how you spell it.
Right, and look for Raw Magic. In the meantime, join us same time, same place next week for more of The Broad Perspective. Remember, it's all perspective. Join us and broaden yours. Thanks for listening.